Chapter 232. Something happened to Beyond the Heavens sect? Gu Duxing was startled. Chu Yang had already whipped the horse pulling the sleigh. The horse neighed and started to gallop. If something happened to Beyond the Heavens sect, then the target would be my master and my junior martial brother. Chu Yang's face was as cold as water. He snorted and said with fire in his eyes, "In Beyond the Heavens sect, other than these two people, no one can harm me." "You mean? Diwu Qingro is taking revenge?" Gu Duxing suddenly realized. Should be. Chu Yang's heart was burning with anxiety. His eyes were full of worry. Meng Chao ran and Tan Tan. These were two people Chu Yang could not afford to lose. Calm down. Gu Duxing grabbed his shoulder. Even if Diwu Qingro is taking revenge with only the two of us going, what's the use? If Diwu Qingro wants to deal with your master, how can the two of us martial great masters deal with him? Even if we can't deal with him, we still have to go. Chu Yang snorted. His eyes slowly calmed down as he pondered. We have to think of a foolproof plan. Gu Duxing's face was as calm as ice as he pondered. From this period of contact, Chu Yang had two major weaknesses. One was his master, the other was his junior martial brother. Something happened to Beyond the Heavens sect. Even if Chu Yang forced himself to calm down, he would not be able to. Thus, at this moment he must be calm. And he must think of a solution for Chu Yang. If he became impulsive like Chu Yang, then it would really be over. Blizzard, forest, Beyond the Heavens sect, cold wind. Gu Duxing sat on the sleigh, frowning as he pondered. How can we resolve this crisis? There is also Purple Bamboo Garden. Chu Yang quietly interjected. Between his eyebrows, a storm of tyranny was forming. No matter what you do, first, your face cannot be exposed. Second, you cannot face the enemy head-on. Gu Duxing said seriously. Third, you must save the people. Although that was the case, seeing that the smoke was still able to reach this place despite the heavy snow, Beyond the Heavens sect was definitely in a precarious situation. You're right. Chu Yang flipped his hand and two white robes appeared in his hands. Wear them. In a snowy land, white clothes are the most inconspicuous. As he said this, he took out a medicine bottle from his bosom and reached out his hand. With a poof, he messed up Gu Duxing's hair. Under the influence of his elemental energy, the medicine powder was sprinkled on Gu Duxing's head. Gu Duxing's black hair actually turned into the same color as his clothes. Rub some dirt on your face too. Chu Yang said as he poured the rest of the powder on his head. Then he stood up and changed out of his clothes in a few moves. He put on his white clothes. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had become two white people, through and through. It was as if he was invisible in this snowy land. Then Chu Yang took out a small package from an unknown place. He opened it and began to put it on his body in handfuls. They were shiny and sparkling. They were all strange hidden weapons. They were like the eyes of a demon in the cold night. Where did you get so many strange things? Gu Duxing was dumbfounded. These things, almost any one of them is a kind of hidden weapon that can take away one's life, and it's the kind that is extremely sinister. Chu Yang actually prepared so many. You don't know how to use these. I will use them. Chu Yang was busy as he put the last few exquisite short zais into his waist. The next moment he shook his hand and two zais appeared. Don't use your black dragon for now, lest you expose your identity. Use this first. Chu Yang held the other shi in his hand. Feeling the murderous aura and ruthless spirit in his heart, the shi sword suddenly let out a whoosh sound and shook in Chu Yang's dantian. Then it rushed into the shi sword in Chu Yang's hand with a violent aura of dusk that could wreak havoc in the world. The tip of the zais was not to be outdone. It immediately occupied its position. Zais. The zais in the zais suddenly let out a sharp cry. It was full of murderous aura as if telling its master, "We are ready." The cry of this zais gave Gu Duxing a big shock. He couldn't help but stare at Chu Yang with his eyes wide open. His hands did not move, his body did not move, and he did not circulate his qi, but the changshi automatically rang in the evening scabbard. This was the Emperor-level aura of Shika. Emperor-level sunset potential. How can Chu Yang have such powerful strength? Furthermore, at this moment, Gu Duxing clearly felt a kind of sunset intent that wanted to pierce through the blue sky. As a guest of the sunset, Gu Duxing knew very well that this kind of sunset was unstoppable. It was the fiercest sunset in the world. He wanted to say something, but he saw that Chu Yang had already slowly closed his eyes. A surge of sunset energy was constantly emitted from Chu Yang's body. Then it was gradually absorbed by the eternal sunset sheath. Slowly, it formed a cycle of sunset energy. It surged in the air like it was slicing apart the cold wind piece by piece. A bloody murderous aura was trembling more and more excitedly. Under the influence of this strong aura of dusk, Gu Duxing suddenly felt that the aura of dusk that had accumulated in his body was suddenly activated. The black dragon dusk let out a clear cry, and Gu Duxing felt as if he was suddenly enlightened. His mind was like a clear stream flowing in an instant, and also like a sharp lightning suddenly striking down. Boom! Gu Duxing clearly heard that a barrier in his heart was broken, and a cold aura of dusk suddenly came out of his body. Shika. From now on, Gu Duxing had truly stepped into the ranks of Shika. It was another free ride. Gu Duxing was speechless. Such a powerful surprise made his body and soul suddenly filled with fighting spirit and fighting spirit. The strong horse galloped, and like a light smoke on the snow, it instantly went far away. The two people on the snow sleigh were like two divine suns that had been unsheathed, pointing at beyond the heavens sect. Everyone who saw them along the way felt a chill from head to toe. There was still 3 more hours to reach beyond the heavens sect. Master, you have to hold on. You have to hold on. Chu Yang's heart was screaming. At this moment he wished that he could grow a pair of wings. Along the way large swathes of land were left behind. Meng Qiaoran gasped for breath and felt that his throat was like a bellows. Although his eyes were still calm and indifferent, his face was already as red as blood. Relying on his familiarity with the terrain, he had already circled around this mountain forest with the enemy for no less than 4 hours. But he still could not get close to the cliff that he wanted to go to the most. Over there was a way to escape in a snowy day. The reason why it was called a snowy day was because of the specific environment. Under the cliff, there was a cave that led to the outside of the mountain. But in a snowy day no one could see it, especially in this valley where the snow was more than 10 feet high. As long as he reached the cliff and jumped into the deep valley, there was a thick layer of snow, and his life was not in danger. As long as he had one breath, he could find the entrance to the cave from under the snow and hide in it, or escape directly, or just hide inside the cave. These were all safe methods. After all, this cave was dug by Wu Yunliang, Meng Qiaoran and Kong Jingfeng. Even in Beyond the Heavens sect, not many people knew about it. But now the enemy seemed to be aware of his plan. They were chasing him, and some even threw out their swords to prevent Meng Qiaoran from going to the cliff. They did not know what was there, but if Meng Qiaoran insisted on going, they would not let him go. Meng Qiaoran's body was covered with more than 10 scars. This was the result of several encounters and battles to the death. Wu Yunliang moved like the wind and met Meng Qiaoran several times. Then the two brothers separated again. But no matter what, as long as Meng Qiaoran was in extreme danger, Wu Yunliang would desperately rush over, but sometimes manpower was exhausted. At this time the two of them were like arrows at the end of their flight. Tan Tan lay unconscious in Meng Qiaoran's arms. There were no scars on his body. Meng Qiaoran was still holding his disciple tightly, not letting him suffer the slightest injury. Tan Tan was such a coincidence. Ordinary people would feel their hair stand on end just by looking at him, but Meng Qiaoran, this master, was showing extreme love. Even if the whole world looks down on you, they don't want you. You are still Master's treasure. With Master here you are safe. Meng Qiaoran was using his actions, using his own life to illustrate this sentence. With a whoosh, a figure appeared behind him like lightning. Meng Qiaoran's eyes were as calm as water. He suddenly leaned to the side and used fleeting snow cloud steps. His body flashed a few times. Every time he flashed, it was out of people's expectations. His hand was like a snake in the evening, reflecting the light of the stars in the snow. Ding ding ding, Meng Qiaoran held evening with one hand. In this moment he had already exchanged dozens of moves with the enemy. His body retreated diagonally. The opponent was a revered martial artist. It was not easy for him either. After a long chase he had used up too much of his strength. He was panting like an ox and his face was purple. After all, he was not like Meng Qiaoran, who was born and raised in Beyond the Heavens sect. Great Zhao's climate was much better than here. How could it be that when he arrived here it was windy and snowy? At first he did not feel anything, but gradually he began to feel suffocated in his chest. A tired but excited laugh sounded. Meng Qiaoran, let's see where you can run now. In the direction Meng Qiaoran was retreating, two people in white suddenly appeared. One on the left and one on the right. They rushed over. 3 revered martial artists. 2 were first grade and 1 was second grade. They formed a triangle and squeezed Meng Qiaoran in the middle. There was no way to escape. Desperate situation. Meng Qiaoran's expression suddenly calmed down. He no longer dodged, nor did he try to escape. His 2 feet were like nailed ships, suddenly nailed to the snowy ground, like a deep abyss and a mountain peak, motionless. His clothes were tattered and his body was covered with wounds. But when he stood there, he was filled with an awe-inspiring aura. This kind of imposing aura made the three enemies not dare to move forward. Instead, they revealed a nervous expression and cautiously took a step back. The three of them knew that Meng Qiaoran was finally going to fight with his life on the line. Calm opponents, no matter if they were pretending or really calm, they had seen many of them. But an opponent like Meng Qiaoran who had been so calm from the beginning to the end was the first time they had seen one. From the moment they saw him, the expression in his eyes had not changed. Even when he was in despair, it still had not changed. It was still the same indifference that looked down on everything. This was a kind of bone-deep calmness and indifference. It was the loneliness and pride of the soul. The three of them dared to bet that they had never seen such a person in their lives. At this moment, this person had assumed a posture of fighting with his life on the line. He was still calm, indifferent, and elegant. However, it made the three of them feel a chill in their hearts without prior consultation. Meng Qiaoran smiled calmly. He slowly raised his head as if there was no one else around. He used his burning face to welcome the ice-cold snowflakes fluttering in the air. He felt the refreshing coolness invading his soul. He exhaled a long breath. It seemed as if he was sighing. It seemed as if he was relieved of a burden. Then he loosened his hand and Tan Tan's body gently slid down to the ground. He lowered his head and gently looked at the autumn water like Changxi in his hand. His gaze was persistent and affectionate. His figure stood tall in the wind and snow. He was lonely and proud. He was detached from the world and independent. His whole body was covered with wounds and his clothes were tattered. But that kind of calm and unrestrained elegance was still in his bones. It was a kind of nobility that would still exist even if his body was smashed to pieces. The three people surrounding him suddenly had a strange feeling. They felt ashamed of their inferiority. The three of them could kill him. But they had a strange feeling at this moment. We don't deserve to kill him. The evening light flickered and flowed. His body was sparkling like a living creature. It seemed as if it was resonating with his heart and soul. It seemed as if they were partners who had entrusted their lives to each other. They were communicating with their souls and making preparations before the battle. Meng Qiaoran faintly smiled. He gently flicked his finger on the soil on Changxi's body. Changxi issued a dragon cry and started to tremble. The sound of a dragon's cry and a tiger's roar shook the snowy sky. It revealed an intense murderous aura. Meng Qiaoran's waist suddenly straightened. It seemed as if a sword had suddenly been unsheathed. He raised his head. The loneliness and coldness in his eyes had completely changed into a sharp aura of the evening. It had completely fused with Changxi's hand. The aura of his entire body shook with a loud bang. The aura of the evening splashed in all directions. He didn't move. But it seemed as if a bomb had exploded with a loud bang. The snow under his feet flew up as a result of his aura. Then it flew out in all directions. Meng Qiaoran's head was covered in dirt. His black hair suddenly flew up and fiercely stood upright. It danced fiercely in the white snow. He recited the evening, wind and rain can't wash away the scars in the heart. The vicissitudes of life can't extinguish the wounds of love. In the midst of his indifferent recitation, Meng Qiaoran's eyes emitted a fierce divine light. He suddenly jumped up and soared high into the sky for 7 feet. He sighed and said, "Don't speak lightly of the ancient times." His figure and Changxi turned into a shining dragon in the sky. The evening light was resplendent and burst. It shot high into the sky. Only when separated can one see the desolation. When Meng Qiaoran recited these 4 lines, it was as if he was bidding farewell to his past, to his life, to his lover, and to his regrets and pain. Although he was unwilling. But this evening he was determined. His face was still calm and indifferent. But in the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of sadness and heart-wrenching pain in his eyes. It was accompanied by a kind of eternal loneliness. It merged into the evening light. The vast and mighty power of the evening, with a momentum of no return, flew across the sky. This was a night where life and death were decided. But it carried a kind of heart-wrenching and soul-shattering feeling. Chapter 233. Go. Kill him. The 3 people shouted at the same time. They pulled out their swords and rushed forward. Just now, although it was not long, they did not take action. This caused Meng Qiaoran's aura and sword energy to reach the peak in an instant. Now that the sword energy was complete, its power was even greater. For them, this was something that should not have happened. When facing an enemy, It was necessary to interrupt the opponent's accumulated aura. Only then would it be beneficial to one's side. But this time, not only did they allow the opponent to complete his aura and sword energy, they did not feel any regret. Facing such a sword attack, someone was bound to be injured, but they did not regret it. This was a very strange state of mind. Although the opponent did not speak from beginning to end, his calmness, and persistence had already attracted their respect. The three figures flew forward to greet him. Junior martial brother. In the distance, Wu Yunliang's hair was disheveled as he desperately rushed forward. Behind him, the revered martial artist and the other person who had besieged him were also in a difficult situation. They were limping. Meng Qiaoran did not seem to hear anything. The corner of his mouth had an indifferent smile as he flew down with his sword. The sword light was resplendent as it crashed down. At this moment, the four sword lights suddenly collided. They collided. The sky suddenly emitted a bright light. Once the four people collided, it was like a huge bomb had suddenly exploded. Countless sword lights flew everywhere. The blazing light refracted the few people who were rushing over, causing them to involuntarily close their eyes. Meng Qiaoran groaned as he flew back like a kite with a broken string. In the other three directions, three screams were heard at the same time. The four figures retreated back to their original positions almost at the same time. At this time, a bloody mist floated to the ground. Countless pieces of flesh fell to the ground. At this moment, the three people's bodies had dozens of sword wounds. After they landed, they immediately raised their heads and looked at Meng Qiaoran. They did not know why, but until now they were only concerned about Meng Qiaoran's expression. They did not know if this person's face, which was like a mask, could change after receiving such a heavy injury. They were disappointed. Meng Qiaoran's body was slightly trembling. Blood was flowing out from several places on his body. His long sword was hanging by his side. Hot blood dripped from the tip of the sword. His face was still as indifferent as ever. The way he looked at the three of them was still cold and indifferent. Amazing. One of them laughed bitterly and said, "We have seen many experts with higher martial arts than you. But, Meng Qiaoran, you are the #1 expert in the world to be able to remain so calm. Dying in your hands was not in vain." Ah. He laughed twice, but suddenly a stream of blood shot out from his chest and he slowly fell down. With a bang, he crashed onto the snowy ground and stopped breathing. There was still a smile on his face. In the battle just now, Meng Qiaoran's sword had already pierced through his chest. Meng Qiaoran looked on indifferently. He slowly raised his sword and said, "Come." Battle was merely a matter of life and death. The Jianghu was also a path of life and death. To be able to go with a smile is also a kind of realm. He actually took the initiative to issue a challenge to the remaining two enemies. "Junior brother. How are you?" Wu Yunliang rushed over as if he was flying. This sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect was gasping for breath. His hair was disheveled and his body was covered with wounds. Even his face had 2 cuts. The remaining 7 enemies surrounded the two of them at the same time. Every one of them was panting. "I can still breathe." Meng Qiaoran smiled faintly. He looked at Wu Yunliang with less indifference and more concern. Meng Qiaoran's eyes would only change when he was facing his own family. He would not be moved by anyone else. Wu Yunliang gasped for breath. He coughed and laughed. "Amazing. If you want to make a move against my Beyond the Heavens sect, how can you not pay a price?" "Ah. We can still afford this price." The middle-grade revered martial artist who was chasing after Wu Yunliang snorted. He tried to suppress the feeling in his chest that was about to explode. He sneered, "If King of Hell Chu breaks down because of this, no matter how much we have to pay, it will be worth it." "Break down?" Meng Qiaoran muttered to himself in a mocking tone. He said confidently, "My disciple will never break down. Go." The middle-grade revered martial artist waved his hand. "Be careful." Cough cough. Cough cough cough. On the ground, a pile of snow moved. Then Tan Tan crawled out in a daze. He stood up and looked around. His eyes went from dazed to sober in an instant. Then there was grief and anger. He jumped up. Without saying anything, he pulled out his sword and formed a defensive formation with Meng Qiaoran and Wu Yunliang back to back. The one facing him was the female revered martial artist. Seeing Tan Tan's strange face with a serious expression, she could not help but feel disgusted. With a shout, the battle broke out again. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing quietly sneaked into Beyond the Heavens sect. Along the way, under the guidance of Chu Yang who knew the way no one knew. After running for a while, they saw a field of purple bamboo in front of them, swaying in the wind. "This is Purple Bamboo Garden." Chu Yang carefully moved forward. There was a battle here. Chu Yang took the lead and chased after the traces left behind. In the purple bamboo forest, there were traces of a battle every few meters. In some places there were bloodstains that were not covered by the snow. Chu Yang's face became more and more serious. The blood here has not coagulated. When they were almost at the purple bamboo forest, Gu Duxing reached out his hand and touched it. In this kind of weather, the blood had not coagulated. This meant that the battle had just ended and there was still hope. Chu Yang relaxed and increased his speed. Suddenly there was a rustling sound in front of them. It seemed that someone was also running hard. The sound of panting could be heard clearly. What should we do? Should we attack together? Or should we return to the sect? Return to the sect? Are you kidding? This matter is not over yet. Too scary. One of them had a lingering fear. Who would have thought that the two people from beyond the heavens sect would be so strong? Let's quickly catch up. Otherwise that bastard will get angry again. Chu Yang's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He quietly moved forward. He saw two red-robed men trudging through the snow, trying their best to move while talking to each other. People from Godly Saber Pavilion. Chu Yang snorted. He lowered his right hand and two short swords appeared in his hand. The next moment he shook his hand and the two swords turned into two shooting stars. Buff, buff. The two of them only let out a single scream before they fell onto the snowy ground. They were already at the end of their rope. How could they guard against an attack from behind? Chu Yang's body flashed and he was already there. He grabbed one of them by the hair and lifted him up. Of the two people, only one was fatal. The other was only seriously injured. He wanted to ask something. People from Godly Saber Pavilion? Chu Yang only asked one question and then stopped. The person in front of him was already breathing out more than he was breathing in. The dagger only pierced his waist. Normally it would not be fatal. However, Chu Yang did not know that there was a wound in front of his body. It was caused by Wu Yunliang's sword. At this moment, both his front and back were injured. The sword wound connected and he died. Bad luck. Chu Yang threw the body on the ground. There are sounds of killing over there. Gu Duxing pricked up his ears and listened quietly. Poison. Two white shadows rushed out like lightning. After walking for a while, a strange howl suddenly came from afar. Chu Yang's body trembled. His face showed a strange expression. Gu Duxing also showed a strange expression. Oh. I say, big sister, don't hit my face. A male duck with a wolf howling voice said angrily, such a handsome face. Won't you feel bad if you break it? It's Tan Tan's voice. Chu Yang said excitedly. Gu Duxing's coffin-like face twitched. He was really curious. How narcissistic did one have to be to say such powerful words in such a life-and-death situation? The two of them carefully crept over. They saw several people fighting fiercely in the distance. The three people who were besieged and in imminent danger were Wu Yunliang, Meng Chaoran, and Tan Tan. Looking at the blood splattering everywhere, Chu Yang's face twitched. Meng Chaoran and the other two had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. They could die at any moment. Calm down, Chu Yang told himself. Then he made a gesture to Gu Duxing. Gu Duxing quietly nodded and slowly lowered his body. Chu Yang squatted down and suddenly exerted force. His body was close to the ground. Just as he moved, Gu Duxing's two palms were full of force and fiercely slapped his feet. Normally this kind of measure would be useless. But now the ground was covered with snow. With a whoosh he quickly slid away. White clothes, white robes, white hair and white eyebrows. It was like a small bump on the snow moving quickly. The people in the fierce battle seemed to have heard something. But when they turned around all they could see was white snow. They could not see anything. Even though Meng Chaoran and Wu Yunliang were still working hard, their hearts were already filled with despair. They knew that they were like a lamp without oil. They could not hold on much longer. The reason why the enemy did not increase their attacks was to minimize their losses. In any case, the terrain here was open. If someone came, they would be able to see. Plus, the three of them did not have the strength to break out of the encirclement. Tan Tan angrily roared and fought with the female revered martial artist in front of him. This female revered martial artist was much taller than him. But she was injured earlier and had fought with Wu Yunliang several times in the snow. She had lost 70% of her martial power. Plus this was a high plateau. It was extremely cold. The female body was even more uncomfortable. She could not take down this guy in a short time. What angered her the most was that this ugly bastard cherished his face very much. He would rather take a sword to his shoulder than let his face be cut. Big sister, I beg you. If you want to kill me, please don't cut my face. Tan Tan felt that there was no hope. He cried and begged, I still have not found a wife. The female revered martial artist almost fainted after hearing this. At this moment she suddenly saw an unimaginable phenomenon. She could not help but cry out in alarm. Chapter 234. This revered martial artist instinctively felt the danger. He rushed forward and blocked with his long sword. A sword light flashed as he continued to attack. Everyone who saw this sword could not help but exclaim in their hearts, brilliant! To be able to react like this while being caught off guard was already at the peak of perfection. He was firmly in an invincible position. This sword was very clever. Everyone was confident that if there was an enemy behind Wu Yun, even if it was a king-level master, this sword could block it. But what happened next made everyone's jaws drop. Cha! With a slight sound, the two swords collided. The revered martial artist's sword was cut in half like a piece of paper, and that sword continued to chase after him at an even faster speed. Puff! The revered martial artist suddenly stopped running. His eyes were empty and filled with despair. In front of his chest, a bright flower of blood suddenly bloomed. Among the snowflakes, there was a cold gleaming sword tip. This revered martial artist was perplexed and in disbelief. He looked down at the sword tip sticking out of his chest where his heart was. His eyes were filled with disbelief and despair. Whoosh! The moment the sword tip came out of his chest, it disappeared in a flash and was suddenly pulled back. And that strange person in white had already turned into a blur with his sword in the wind and snow, crashing into the other revered martial artist. Behind him, the earthly revered martial artist who had just slashed powerlessly clutched his chest and slowly fell down. His movements seemed to have been frozen in slow motion. Behind him, the mysterious white-robed man's movements were as fast as lightning. One was fast and one was slow. It was a stark contrast. Only one sword was accurate and ruthless. It directly cut off the life of an revered martial artist. Big brother? The remaining revered martial artist roared. He suddenly looked up to the sky and shouted, Bastard! I will kill you. He threw his sword away from Wu Yunliang and crazily rushed forward. However, at this moment, the blurry white figure suddenly retreated with a whoosh. He was clearly trying his best to run forward, but at this moment he suddenly retreated. It turned out that all his movements were retreating, but in the eyes of others he was clearly moving forward. This was a kind of extreme movement technique used to deceive people's eyes. Moving forward and retreating, moving forward and returning. Meng Chao Ran and Wu Yunliang both exclaimed in their hearts. Too familiar. Fleeting snow cloud steps. But this kind of fleeting snow cloud steps was beyond the scope of what the two of them could understand. The middle-grade revered martial artist let out a thunderous roar and rushed forward recklessly. However, at this moment, on the snowy ground behind him, another white shadow suddenly exploded. The sword was like a clap of thunder. It still went straight for his back. There were actually two such white-robed men. Not just one. The sword of the white-clothed man in front of him had already let out a thunderous roar and crashed into the chest of a revered martial artist beside him. Together with the sword. Madly colliding. The middle-grade revered martial artist was extremely frightened as he yelled and attacked with his sword. However, this person did not even try to dodge. With a schwa sound, the sword pierced into his abdomen. However, the revered martial artist and his sword had already been sent flying out of the revered martial artist's body, leaving behind a trail of blood. That's right, he had knocked his way out of his opponent's body. His white robes were dyed red, and there was an almost transparent bloody hole in his lower abdomen, which was pierced by his opponent's sword. Stand still in the snow. His body was covered with pieces of the middle-grade revered martial artist's internal organs. Behind him, the middle-grade revered martial artist was only left with 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head. His entire body, from his neck to his lower abdomen, had completely disappeared. It had turned into a big hole. Even a wild animal would be able to crawl through such a big hole. The eyeballs on the middle-grade revered martial artist's head turned and he fell to the ground with a plop sound. His empty body fell to the ground and broke into 5 pieces. Head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. His body was gone. The middle-grade revered martial artist behind him roared with red eyes and rushed forward. However, halfway through, he suddenly let out a miserable cry. With a pew sound, the tip of a sword came out of his chest. The tip of the sword flashed and disappeared. He suddenly shouted and fiercely slapped back. The person behind him who was retreating also slapped back. With a bang, the white-robed man flew out like a kite with a broken string. The middle-grade revered martial artist's front and back, where his heart was, blood was crazily spurting out from 2 wounds. He laughed bitterly and muttered, "Another one, another one?" Nobody understood what he meant, but he had already fallen down. His 2 legs kicked twice and then there was not the slightest movement. In a flash, 2 middle-grade revered martial artists and 1 middle-grade revered martial artist had died on the spot. Everything that had happened in an instant was like the rise of a rabbit and the fall of a falcon. Everyone had an illusion. Even if they had eyes all over their body, they would not be able to see everything clearly. The heavens and the earth were silent. Even the sound of breathing had stopped. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stood there dumbfounded. They only felt that their minds were in chaos. They did not dare to believe it. Especially the revered martial artists of Golden Horse Riders Department who had the absolute advantage a moment ago. They were all dumbfounded. The enemy was like a lamp that had run out of oil. They were just unwilling to pay the price and slowly torture them to death. At this moment, this place was an empty mountain forest. Even if the enemy sent reinforcements, they would be able to see them at a glance. At that time it would not be too late to kill them. After all, everyone had been fighting and chasing for so long. Regardless of the enemy's side, everyone had exhausted their strength. Even the middle-grade revered martial artists were near the point of exhaustion. If they could save a bit of energy, they would save a bit of energy. If they were too hasty, it was very likely that they would be dragged down by the enemy. At this point, who would be willing to be a scapegoat? After all, with every passing moment, the enemy's strength would weaken a little. Right now they could not even hold their swords steadily. Everything was under control. They were only waiting for the final blow to end this mission. After returning, they would be rewarded with high positions and generous salaries. Moreover, they would be able to deal the greatest blow to their biggest enemy, King of Hell Chu. It could be said that if King of Hell Chu collapsed, Great Zhao would win the war between the 2 countries. Everything would be laid down by today's battle. The impact of this battle would be indescribable. Who would have thought that under such a favorable situation, the situation would suddenly change? Just as their hearts were filled with joy, they were suddenly thrown into the abyss. 2 middle-grade revered martial artists had become 2 corpses in such a short period of time. They had died so unjustly and so easily. The middle-grade revered martial artist was even more miserable. In an instant, his body had been turned into a tunnel by the enemy. A sound came from afar. Everyone stiffly turned their heads to look. They saw that the person who had sneak attacked the 2nd middle-grade revered martial artist had already stood up. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. However, his body was as straight as a javelin. He walked over step by step with his back straight. As he walked closer, everyone could clearly feel a cold light flickering from his sword. It was as if he wanted to cut through everything as he slowly approached. A swordsman. It turned out that this was a swordsman. A revered level swordsman. No wonder he could sneak attack a middle-grade revered martial artist. This person was wearing white clothes and had white hair. His face was also snow white. Even his eyebrows were snow white, the same color as his body. Even if he was standing right in front of them, they could not clearly see his appearance. At this moment, the white-clothed person who had appeared earlier slowly turned around. Now he had become a person wearing red clothes. It was even harder to see his appearance. However, his sharp eyes and aura clearly told everyone that he was also a swordsman. A swordsman. At this moment, everyone from Golden Horse Riders Department felt like crying. How many swordsmen were there in the lower 3 heavens? Normally it would be rare to meet a swordsman. But now, when they were exhausted, 2 swordsmen had appeared at the same time. This kind of thing made everyone speechless. Although the 2 of them were injured, their aura did not decrease in the slightest. If Tan Tan was included, the situation would be completely reversed. Meng Chao Ran's side had 5 people, while Golden Horse Riders Department's side had 4. In terms of numbers, they were at a disadvantage. Tan Tan's mind relaxed. He only felt pain all over his body. There was no strength left in his body. He sat down and fainted. He had already exhausted his strength. He could only bitterly support himself so that he would not fall. Now that his mind was relaxed, how could he continue to support himself? Wu Yunliang looked at the 2 white-clothed people suspiciously. In his memory there were no such 2 people. Where did these 2 people come from? Why did they help him? But no matter what, he was temporarily out of danger. Meng Chao Ran calmly looked at the enemy and said casually, "Do you still want to continue?" His words gave the enemy a strong hint. This is an ambush that I have already prepared. You've walked right into my trap. The 4 revered martial artists of Golden Horse Riders Department looked at each other. They were in a dilemma. Meng Ran said casually, "We have no grievances. Today's battle is over. If you do not want to die here, then I will not send you off." "This is your trap? You have already prepared it?" the female revered martial artist asked incredulously. "It can be considered so." Meng Ran said ambiguously, "I just did not expect such a coincidence." The reason why Meng Ran said this was because he recognized the identity of the other person. Although he could not see the person's face, Meng Ran recognized him from his eyes. This person was Chu Yang, his disciple. No matter how Chu Yang changed, how could he hide from Meng Ran who had watched him grow up? This recognition made Meng Ran instantly make a decision. He and his eldest martial brother had already lost the ability to fight. Originally, their nerves were still tense, but with the appearance of reinforcements, they instinctively let out a sigh of relief. With this sigh of relief, the two of them could barely stand. Not to mention fighting. Since it was Chu Yang, although Chu Yang seemed to have improved a lot, but in such a short time, how much could he have improved? Moreover, although the sneak attack was successful, there was a bloody hole in his lower abdomen. This was a fatal injury. If they continued to fight, the severity of the injury would be unimaginable. As for his helper, although he had also killed a revered martial artist, his injuries were also not light. The blood at the corner of his mouth was bright red. It was the blood of his internal organs. If they continued to fight, he would not be able to keep his life. Chapter 235. Even though the other side had already lost 4 people and the rest were injured, they were still stronger than Meng Chao's side. The most important thing was that Chu Yang's identity could not be revealed, and he could not die. But if they fought, even if they won, they would lose at least 2 or 3 lives. Therefore, Meng Ran made a decision at this moment: scare the other side away first. Even though the other side had attacked Beyond the Heavens sect and had a deep hatred for him, no matter what, he had to save his own life first. Meng Ran's calmness was at its best at this moment. The other side's 4 people were indeed scared out of their wits. The 2 leaders had already died and they were all injured. The situation was clear. If they continued to fight, there was only one path: mutual destruction. "Let's go." Looking at Meng Ran's group with hatred, the female revered martial artist angrily waved her hand. She did not even pick up the bodies of her companions and turned around to leave. Meng Ran said casually, "Please go back and tell Prime Minister Diwu. Beyond the Heavens sect will remember this." The female revered martial artist coldly snorted and did not reply. The 4 people disappeared into the snowstorm in a blink of an eye. On this bloody battlefield there were only 5 people left. Meng Ran watched the others' figures disappear. Finally, his legs went soft and he fell heavily to the ground. He only had time to say, "Chu Yang, immediately. Go to the cliff." He fainted. His face was like gold paper and his breathing was weak. "Chu Yang? You are Chu Yang?" Wu Yunliang opened his eyes wide, looking at this strange person with white hair and white eyebrows. He could not believe it. "I am Chu Yang. Martial uncle, I trust you have been well since we last met." Chu Yang held his abdomen with one hand. He tore a piece of cloth from his robe and wrapped it tightly around his wound. "So it really is you." Wu Yunliang let out a long sigh and fell to the ground. He smiled with difficulty. "Immediately do as your master said. We are about to die." Gu Duxing staggered over and coughed. Revered martial artist, so strong. He had been holding on, but his injuries were not light. Meng Ran and the others were exhausted from the fierce battle, but Chu Yang and Gu Duxing had also traveled a long distance to come here. To be able to achieve such a result was already the best-case scenario. After leading Chu Yang and Gu Duxing to a hidden cave, Wu Yunliang's mind was completely relaxed and he immediately fainted. This cave was under layers of snow, and the snow was still fluttering in the air. Everyone's footprints disappeared without a trace in an instant. A few revered martial artists of the Golden Horse Riders department arrived with a large group of people soon after these people had left. But they didn't manage to catch them. These people were the people from the Divine Saber Pavilion and the Black Blood Union who besieged the Beyond the Heavens sect. It turned out that this was their plan. They would retreat temporarily and then return with their men. The way they saw it, these people were all seriously injured. Even if they ran, how far could they run? Who would have thought that in such a short period of time after he returned, he had already disappeared? After searching everywhere for a long time, they still didn't find anything. They could only reluctantly retreat. Under the layer of snow in the cave, Meng Ran and the other 2 had been unconscious for 2 days and 2 nights. Chu Yang helped each of them drink a bottle of Vitality spring water. Their lives were no longer in danger. However, the three of them had lost a lot of blood. Especially the damage to their divine souls was severe. Their physical strength had already reached its limit. They needed time to recuperate. As for Gu Duxing's internal injury after that palm strike, the extravasated blood was forced out in these 2 days. As for Chu Yang's lower abdomen, it recovered a little faster. However, the sword spirit complained, "There is one thing that I still can't figure out." Gu Duxing frowned and sat cross-legged. He was puzzled and said, "The same sneak attack. The same revered martial artist. The same attack pierced the heart. Why did your attack immediately stop breathing? But mine was still able to turn around and hit me with a palm strike? This shouldn't be." Chu Yang coughed twice and said, This shouldn't be. Gu Duxing couldn't figure it out. "I clearly pierced the heart. Moreover, I also added an invisible sword energy to it. Moreover, my martial power is so much higher than yours." "What?" Chu Yang coughed and said, "Perhaps some people look strange and their hearts are on the right side." He secretly cried in his heart. He thought, "Do I have to tell you that I am the master of the Tribulation Sword? My sword has the sword point and sword edge of the Tribulation Sword on it. It is equivalent to a clone of the Tribulation Sword. How can it be compared to your ordinary sword?" "I'm not talking about this. Do you think I don't even know if I pierced the heart?" Gu Duxing said gloomily, "That is a different feeling. I'm not that stupid. What I mean is, it's only right for him to return and give me a slap, but it's completely wrong for you to die immediately." "Why?" Chu Yang looked helplessly at Gu Duxing, who wanted to get to the bottom of this. He said helplessly, "This? How should I know? You should go and ask him." "Fuck." Gu Duxing did not say anything. "Ask him? Oh, that bastard is already dead, okay?" On the afternoon of the second day, Wu Yunliang was the first to wake up. It was not until the third day that Meng Chaoran woke up. "Why are you here?" The first thing Meng Chaoran said when he woke up seemed to be very dissatisfied. "I was passing by." Cough cough. Chu Yang laughed. "I came to take a look." "Passing by?" Meng Chaoran looked at him suspiciously. He clearly did not believe Chu Yang's words, but the joy of seeing his disciple washed away his doubts. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face. He said casually, "Just now I was thinking, how would you avenge me? I did not expect that there would be no need for revenge. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. How can you say that there is no need for revenge?" Chu Yang snorted and said, "Diwu Qingro dared to do such a thing. If I do not make him pay the price, how can I repay Master's 18 years of upbringing?" "It is good that you are fine. How are your injuries?" Meng Chaoran looked at his disciple with concern. "I am fine." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Master, you are also fine." Only then did Meng Chaoran realize that something was wrong. His body was covered with injuries, both internal and external. Normally, even if he didn't die on the spot, he would have been crippled if he didn't die. So, why was he so energetic when he woke up? He could not help but be surprised. Wu Yunliang looked at this pair of master and disciple with jealousy. He snorted and said, "Master and disciple are still so clingy. Disgusting. You are just jealous." Meng Chaoran laughed and said, "This is not the style of a sect master." Wu Yunliang snorted and turned his head away. "Master, don't guess. It is because of this." Chu Yang handed over a small jade bottle to Meng Chaoran as if he was presenting a treasure. Meng Chaoran took it and opened the jade cork. A sweet fragrance came out. He immediately felt refreshed. He could not help but exclaim, "Vitality Spring? Where did you get this priceless treasure?" "I got it by chance. Master is really knowledgeable. You even know this." Chu Yang laughed. "This is a gift from your disciple to you. That is not good. You are alone outside. This is what you need the most. What will you do if you give me so much?" Meng Chaoran glared at him. "You keep it for yourself. I don't need it." "Oh, I have more. Since I am giving it to you, you can keep it." Chu Yang grinned. "Master, am I the kind of person who does not prepare anything?" Meng Chaoran was still hesitating when Wu Yunliang reached out his hand. His eyes flashed with admiration. "Little brother, since you don't want it, why don't you give it to me?" "In your dreams." Meng Chaoran's mouth revealed a trace of pride. He hugged the bottle tightly to his chest. "This was given to me by my disciple. If you want it, go find your other disciples." Wu Yunliang sighed. "If I could have such a promising disciple, even if this sect master were to die immediately, it would still be a smile on my face." Meng Chaoran was very happy and said, Even though I cannot give it to you, you can still come and drink it when you need it. Wu Yunliang frowned and agreed. He thought to himself, did I not flatter you so much just to say this? This old man is also the sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect. How could he be such a bootlicker? Whoa whoa. Tan Tan woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Chu Yang. He rubbed his eyes and cried out in surprise, Chu Yang, why did you come back? When did you come back? Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? Gu Duxing, who was sitting cross-legged on the side, suddenly frowned. He helplessly and powerlessly glared at Tan Tan. He tore off a piece of cloth and divided it into 2 pieces to plug his ears. It was really unbearable. Previously Luo Kudi's woo 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 every day was extremely unpleasant to hear. But now, compared to this Tan Tan, Luo Kudi's voice was simply the sound of the heavens. Next, Chu Yang, look. Haven't I become more handsome recently? Tan Tan stretched out his hand and groped in his bosom. Then he suddenly screamed, ah, that B***tisage broke my mirror. Mirror? Chu Yang's eyes widened. His whole body trembled. Wu Yunliang anxiously asked, the mirror is broken? Then, is the divine chi-gathering fish okay? The divine chi-gathering fish is with me. Meng Chaoran rolled his eyes, how can I let this little thing fight with it? Wu Yunliang sighed in relief, that's good, that's good. On the other side, Tan Tan had already grabbed Chu Yang and started to talk. In the blink of an eye, he had already talked about today's attack to what happened 3 months ago. From the heavens to the earth, he started to talk about his own appearance. Meng Chaoran's expression did not change. He stood there motionless. Meng Chaoran had long become accustomed to this kind of situation. He had honed his nerves to be incomparably calm. Wu Yunliang was listening on the side. He let out long and short sighs. He really admired his junior martial brother. So many years of facing this guy, how did he endure? Even though Gu Duxing covered his ears, he could not completely block out the sound. After listening for a while, he felt his mind was in a mess. This was worse than a heart demon. With this sound next to him, he could not meditate. He let out a long sigh. His eyebrows twitched. He turned his head. Chu Yang, let your junior martial brother heal his injuries. Ever since he woke up, he has only been talking. Chu Yang looked at Gu Duxing in surprise. Suddenly he could not help but laugh. He patted Tan Tan's shoulder. Brother, you are too capable. To be able to make this piece of wood and ice like this, you are the first person in the entire Heaven Layer continent. Really? Tan Tan's spirit was lifted. He put his face in front of Gu Duxing's eyes. It was as if he had finally met a soulmate after being alone for thousands of years. He was beaming with joy. This big brother, are you also captivated by my charm? Captivated by my handsomeness? Captivated by my handsomeness? Chapter 236. In the past few days, everyone's injuries had healed very well. For the first 2 days they relied on Chu Yang's rations. On the 3rd day Gu Duxing went out to hunt a deer. The 5 of them stayed in the cave and ate a delicious meal. Regarding the current situation of Beyond the Heavens sect, Wu Yunliang was not worried at all. Regarding this, Gu Duxing was very surprised. Your Beyond the Heavens sect has been raided, yet you, the sect master, are still as calm as Mount Tai? Regarding this, Wu Yunliang could only say a few words. Of course there will be losses, but I have confidence in my second martial brother. Gu Duxing seemed to understand, but he also seemed to not understand. Only when Chu Yang explained did he realize that Li Jinsong was Diwu Qingrou's spy. He could not help but shake his head with a bitter smile. However, with this kind of attack, even the ordinary disciples of Beyond the Heavens sect must have suffered heavy losses, right? Gu Duxing said. This is Jianghu. Wu Yunliang sighed. I hope this incident will make the younger brothers remember that the sect is not a safe harbor for them. If something happens in the sect, they will still die. Without the sect, they are just wandering souls. Only in a place of suffering can one have a backbone of iron. Although the price is heavy, if one does not pay and bear it, one will not be able to stand up again. Wu Yunliang said this with a deep sigh. Gu Duxing looked pensive. Wu Yunliang's words made Gu Duxing think of himself and Gu Miaoling. Could this suffering of their lives also be a kind of training? Wu Yunliang once asked Chu Yang in a roundabout way after a rest. Do you have someone in mind? Yes. Chu Yang answered without hesitation. The corner of his mouth could not help but reveal a doting smile. Wu Yunliang stroked his beard and smiled. In his opinion, Chu Yang had always been working with his daughter in Iron Cloud. If he had someone in mind, who else could it be but his daughter? He did not think that these two little guys had already secretly done this. Therefore Wu Yunliang did not ask any more. Meng Chaoran's mouth revealed a bitter smile. According to his understanding, the person Chu Yang was talking about was definitely not Wu Qianqian. Meng Chaoran, who understood his disciple to the bone, was completely certain of this. If it was really Wu Qianqian, then Chu Yang's attitude towards Wu Yunliang would at least be a bit warmer. During these few days of recuperation, Meng Chaoran was the most gratified, while Tan Sun was the happiest. This fellow basically never shut his mouth once he opened it. Eventually, Gu Duxing didn't find his words unpleasant anymore. Moreover, Tan Tan had a pure heart. So, it would be very difficult to develop evil thoughts towards him as long as they got along with him for a long time. After another day, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing confirmed that Wu Yunliang and the other two had recovered from their injuries. Meng Chaoran didn't ask about his disciple's choice. He only said with concern, "Protect yourself." Chu Yang and Gu Duxing left the cave under Tan Tan's tearful eyes. Chu Yang's words echoed in his mind, "I will wait for you in Iron Cloud." As for the safety of Meng Chaoran and Tan Tan, everyone decided to temporarily move out of the Purple Bamboo Garden after some discussion. Since Diwu Qingro had acted once, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't act a second time. Temporarily avoiding him was a long-term plan. Chu Yang has changed a lot. His progress has reached a terrifying level. Why are you not surprised at all? You don't ask anything? After Chu Yang and Tan Tan left, Wu Yunliang asked Meng Chaoran. So what if I ask? So what if I don't ask? Meng Chaoran said casually, that is Chu Yang's good fortune. As long as my disciple obtains it, I will not ask how he obtained it. He smiled and turned to look at Wu Yunliang, but if someone wants to steal what my disciple obtained, then I will fight with my life on the line. Wu Yunliang smiled bitterly. Where are you going to hide? Wu Yunliang asked. I want to take Tan Tan with me for 3 days. Meng Chaoran sighed. His eyes revealed a strange expression. If we stay in lower 3 heavens, then we will become Chu Yang's biggest obstacle. Plus, having the divine qi gathering fish in lower 3 heavens will produce spiritual energy that cannot be compared to lower 3 heavens. It will be very beneficial for Tan Tan's improvement. You want to try again? Wu Yunliang was silent for a while before asking. No. Meng Chaoran shook his head. His expression was bleak. If I am alone, then I will go. But with Tan Tan I will not. When will you hand Tan Tan over to Chu Yang, or find his biological parents? Wu Yunliang sighed and said, if you leave I will have one less capable helper. Under these circumstances me leaving is the biggest help I can give you. Meng Chaoran snorted, when do you leave? No. The two Martial brothers looked at each other with deep feelings. After a while Wu Yunliang turned around and said softly, if you want to leave then leave quickly. I will not watch you leave. Meng Chaoran sighed deeply. After a while he said, take care. Take care. Wu Yunliang said quietly. He stood there for a long time. He heard the sound of footsteps behind him disappear, but he did not turn around. After a long time he smiled and said to himself, little Martial brother, I actually hope you can fulfill your dream. You have protected Beyond the Heavens sect for so many years. I know how hard it was for you. Now you have finally made your own decision. You have to walk your own path. He smiled gently. His eyes were filled with deep blessings. I only hope that one day you and I are still here. We brothers can still sit across each other and drink to our heart's content. At that time, I would already be in my twilight years. He wanted to turn around and watch his little Martial brother leave. But after turning his head halfway he held himself back. He maintained a strange posture and left the cave as if he was flying. Let me, alone, face the shattered world of Beyond the Heavens sect. Wu Yunliang thought silently. His body flashed like lightning and he left the cave. Purple Bamboo Garden was still filled with purple bamboo, but the people inside were no longer there. Wu Yunliang walked through the sea of purple bamboo. His heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. Purple Bamboo Garden was no longer there. Then Beyond the Heavens sect's first peak garden was finally disbanded. Starting tomorrow I will go to Iron Cloud, little Martial brother, good luck. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing walked leisurely out of Purple Bamboo Garden and out of Beyond the Heavens sect. At the foot of the mountain Chu Yang looked back. At the top of the mountain, there seemed to be a touch of purple swaying in the sky. It was as if someone was waving their hand reluctantly. Chu Yang did not move for a long time. He had a feeling that after leaving he would not be able to return to this place for a long time. When he comes back, will this place still be the original Beyond the Heavens sect? Your master is not simple. In the past few days, Gu Duxing had the deepest impression of Meng Qiaoran's indifference. It was a kind of indifference that had seen through the world and was not bothered by anything. But there was also a kind of stubborn and persistent indifference. This was an indescribable feeling. My master will take Tan Tan and leave this place. Chu Yang said disappointedly. Teacher likes purple the most, which is purple bamboo. If he leaves, I am afraid he will be very reluctant. Then do you know if your master leaves, where will he go? Gu Duxing asked. My master's martial power is not very high. Although he can protect himself in the lower three heavens, if he goes to the lower three heavens, he will be in danger at every step. Chu Yang slowly exhaled, but I can faintly feel that my master's opportunity to break through should be in the lower three heavens. He has always been looking after us. He doesn't seem to care about anything. But we brothers have always been on master's mind. He will accompany us and look after us as long as we are happy in the lower three heavens. And he will continue to look after us. And this will continue on forever. But now, when my master finds out that his existence will affect the fate of Beyond the Heavens sect and affect my heart, he will resolutely leave. Unless he does not leave, but once he leaves, he will leave this world. Chu Yang sighed softly. Duxing, from now on, in the lower three heavens, no one will see my master again. 3 days? Gu Duxing said quietly. Yes. Chu Yang said, Master will not allow Diwu Qingro to use him to influence me. So if he leaves, he will leave completely. And this is also what I look forward to the most after understanding many things, but also what I am most reluctant to let go of. Gu Duxing did not understand. Duxing, do you know of any big clans with the surname Yi? Chu Yang asked softly. His eyes flashed with an inexplicable brilliance. Surname Yi? Gu Duxing thought for a while and said, As far as I know, there are no clans with the surname Yi in the upper three heavens. However, this could also be because I am ignorant. Chu Yang was a little lost in thought. But in the upper three heavens there are clans with the surname Yi. Gu Duxing's eyes flashed with a thoughtful look. Upper three heavens? Chu Yang suddenly turned his head and looked at Gu Duxing. The upper three heavens Yi clan is one of the big clans that has dominated the heavens since ancient times. Gu Duxing's eyes flashed with reverence. It was reverence like looking at a tall mountain. Chu Yang's heart shook. With Gu Duxing's temperament he still showed such a look. Then, the power of the upper three heavens Yi clan could be imagined. One of the big clans that has dominated the heavens since ancient times. Chu Yang softly muttered to himself. His eyes flashed with brilliance. He thought of the deep heartache and despair in Meng Qiaoran's eyes. Upper three heavens? Chu Yang murmured, Big clans of the upper three heavens? What do you want to do? Gu Duxing sensitively smelled something different. He couldn't help but ask in horror. Nothing. Chu Yang's figure flashed and rushed forward. His voice faintly came from the front. Duxing, do you want to become the clan master of one of the big clans? Jianghu, this joke is not funny at all. Humph! In the distance, Meng Qiaoran's expression was calm. He brought Tan Tan and walked step by step into the rolling thunder clouds. Master, where are we going? Tan Tan looked back 3 times with every step. To find your birth parents. Meng Qiaoran said lightly, it is also to go to a magical place. When can I come back? Tan Tan's voice was a little choked. Chu Yang is still waiting for me to help him in Iron Cloud Citadel. You can also wait for him to help you in that magical world, Meng Qiaoran said softly. He turned his head and looked at the vast expanse of snow between heaven and earth. He said softly, Eldest senior brother, take care. Chu Yang, take care of yourself. Chapter 237. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were walking on the road. They had already experienced 2 snowstorms. 10 more days and we will reach Great Xiao. Chu Yang pointed with his whip and said with a smile. Gu Duxing nodded silently. Both of them looked very different from their original appearances. They were completely different from their original appearances. Even their body shape, face shape, and the distance between their facial features were all different. Now, even if Wu Yunliang was standing opposite them, he would not be able to recognize that the person opposite him was Chu Yang. As for Gu Duxing, he was dressed in black. His face was cold and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Other than the difference in his appearance, he had returned to his usual coffin face. At first glance, he looked like a person who kept strangers away. At this point, they were already at the border of the 2 countries. Looking from afar, there were many military banners. A murderous aura soared into the sky. It was as if the millions of brave souls who sacrificed themselves for their countries were still fighting in the clouds. The scenery at the border is indeed different. Gu Duxing was a little shaken. Yes, if you don't go to the battlefield at the border, no one would have thought that even the air here is filled with the smell of tragedy. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Those who enjoy life in luxury, do they know that millions of bones have been buried here for their enjoyment? Those peaceful lives of men and women are the things that these brave souls yearn for the most. These bones have already been buried underground. Who knows how many parents are still waiting for each other at the beautiful gates? How many beauties are still waiting in their boudoirs, waiting for the return of their husband through the autumn waters? Who would know that the person in their dreams has already vanished? Gu Duxing was silent for a long time. Finally he said, "Boss, you seem to be very emotional these days." "This is not emotional." Chu Yang looked at the battle clouds at the border and said, "Perhaps, this is the law of the heavens." The law of the heavens. Gu Duxing looked at the two camps and sighed. "If I were the ruler of the heavens, I would not allow the people of the upper three heavens to interfere with the power struggle of the lower three heavens. Because, there are so many people lying here. If an expert were to kill them with a single move, wouldn't these tens of millions of heroic spirits die with everlasting regret?" Chu Yang nodded and said, "Compared to the upper three heavens and the lower three heavens, this lower three heavens is more like a real world." Gu Duxing suddenly stopped in his tracks and muttered to himself, "Compared to the upper three heavens and the lower three heavens, this lower three heavens is more like a real world." Suddenly he realized something. Of course, what Chu Yang had said wasn't the real transformation of the sea into mulberry fields. But, wouldn't the people of the lower three heavens see the transformation of the sea into mulberry fields in an instant? Comparing the two worlds, Gu Duxing's state of mind suddenly had a breakthrough in that instant. When he looked at the ordinary battlefield again, a trace of respect rose in his heart. And his cultivation had actually made another breakthrough after 10 days. Second grade revered sword artist. There was a smile in Chu Yang's eyes. Gu Duxing's advancement was truly in line with the word, genius. From now on, Gu Duxing's words and actions were closer to the lonely guest of Chu Yang's previous life who had shocked the world. But in this life he would no longer be lonely. After a long time, Gu Duxing ended his breakthrough. He opened his eyes and looked at Chu Yang. He said softly, "Old man?" "Thank you." "It's nothing." Chu Yang said lightly, "The reason why we took a detour and insisted on passing through this battlefield was to let you experience the emotions of this battlefield. Since you've already experienced it and improved, we should hurry on." "How did you know that I would experience it?" Gu Duxing asked, puzzled. "Because the sword that you cultivate is also the emotionless sword Dao." The corners of Chu Yang's mouth curled up into a bitter smile. "That's right. But the emotionless sword Dao will never reach the peak." Chu Yang said softly, "This is a detour. But after seeing this battlefield, a kind of realization will rise in your heart, and that is, protection. The sword Dao is for protection." Gu Duxing frowned and pondered deeply. "Don't underestimate this realization. After today your sword Dao has already transformed into the sword Dao with emotions. Because you have the heart of protection, Gu Miaoling's expectations, and all of us brothers, these are all the driving forces of your sword Dao." Chu Yang sighed in his heart. If it was in his previous life, there would also be people who could guide him like this. "Here." Chu Yang threw a book to Gu Duxing, who was deep in thought. "Take a look at this book. Before you reach the king grade you shouldn't need it anymore." Gu Duxing took it and read. He couldn't help but tremble. Sword Dao of a king? His thin body couldn't help but tremble a little. This was not a sword technique, but the cultivation realization of a swordsman. Every step and every moment was written clearly. This would play an absolutely complementary role for Gu Duxing's sword Dao cultivation. It was tantamount to having a guide on a road of perplexity. It was like a blind person who suddenly had a crutch to guide the way in front of him when he was trekking in the world. Following this cultivation, there wouldn't be any mishaps on the road. And what Gu Duxing didn't know was, this sword Dao of a king didn't belong to anyone. It was a part of the Calamity Sword Spirit's realization. Following this cultivation path, although Gu Duxing's cultivation path wasn't as good as Chu Yang's, it would be the peak of the sword Dao in the entire heavenly realm. After walking for a few more days, the two finally entered the territory of Great Zhao. Slowly villages and towns appeared along the way. And one after another, rumors began to spread from here. At noon, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing entered a restaurant and ordered a few dishes to relieve their tiredness. The small restaurant was already full of people. Almost all of them were Jianghu heroes with sabers and swords. They were all talking loudly. With the way the two were dressed, they were not eye-catching in this restaurant. They were like water droplets that melted into the sea. But gradually, a piece of news caught the two's attention. Did you know? The heavenly treasure Ask the Heaven sword has appeared. What kind of news is this? I already knew. Ask the Heaven sword. Legend has it that 8,000 years ago, the martial Saint Ji Wentian's personal weapon. Legend has it that Ji Wentian's martial arts manuals and sword-down knowledge are hidden. Sigh, such a godly item, if one gets it, one will become a martial saint in the future. Oh my God. Ask the Heaven sword? Martial saint? Tell me. Waiter, bring another pot of good wine and 2 plates of beef for this table. The conversation at this table attracted the attention of the people at the next table. Immediately, people came up with smiles of exultation. Not long after, the 2 tables merged into one. Yes, this Ask the Heaven sword is really a peerless treasure. Legend has it that a few days ago someone held this Ask the Heaven sword. With just a light swing, the sword of Jianghu of northern Zhou was cut into 2 pieces. Then with another swing, Jianghu was cut into 2 pieces. It really is a godly weapon. The people who were talking were full of smiles. Their eyes were shining and their faces were red with excitement. It was as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Of course. Otherwise, how could it be a martial saint's weapon? The people who were listening were fascinated. When I can see it with my own eyes, my life will not be in vain. That's right. Many people in the restaurant chimed in, each with their own thoughts. I wonder where the master of this Ask the Heaven sword is right now. This was the question that everyone wanted to know the most. I don't know. However, this master of Ask the Heaven sword, ever since its identity was exposed, every step he took would be filled with thorns. Looking at the traces of killing on the way, he should be heading in the direction of the province. Oh. Many people responded with a meaningful, oh, haha, you only know that Ask the Heaven sword has appeared? Suddenly, someone laughed and said, do you know why Ask the Heaven sword Saint Ji Wentian fell 8,000 years ago? Why the martial saint fell? Many people turned around and saw a man in a black robe sitting alone at a table with a complacent expression on his face. Please speak. Aya, this is embarrassing. Waiter, bring the wine. Bring the best wine, bring the best dishes. Someone shouted with the spirit of spending money like water, this big brother, please give me some face and drink a cup, how about it? Good ha. May I ask the Heaven sword saint? Speaking of Ask the Heaven sword saint, he is like a child without a mother. It is a long story. The man in the black robe sighed and said, legend has it that 8,000 years ago, there was a martial saint whose cultivation shook the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. That was Ask the Heaven sword Saint Ji Wentian. However, at that time, Ask the Heaven sword Saint Ji Wentian was not the only one who was in the limelight. There was another person? Could he be comparable to a martial saint? At that time, one sword and one saber were equally famous in the heavens. They had been together for hundreds of years and tens of millions of years. The other person was Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huang Quan. The man in the black robe took a big gulp of wine. Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huang Quan. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Although they did not know who this Underworld Saber Saint was, once they heard that this Saber Saint was as famous as Ask the Heaven Sword Saint, they were filled with respect. Although they did not know who Ask the Heaven Sword Saint was before this, what could they say if they did not know? Do you know? The man in the black robe chewed on his beef and drank his wine. Back then, these 2 top experts were mortal enemies. They could not exist under the same sky. Again, there was such a thing. Of course. Ask the Heaven Sword Saint and Underworld Saber Saint had been fighting for hundreds of years. Finally, one day the 2 of them agreed to a life-and-death battle. The man in the black robe said, a life-and-death battle? Yes. It was a life-and-death battle. The man in the black robe sighed and said, that battle was truly earth-shattering. Heaven and earth lost their color and the sun and moon lost their light. Directly from the upper 3 heavens to the lower 3 heavens, dozens of mountains in the upper 3 heavens were completely flattened. It is the chaotic soul planes of the upper 3 heavens. The man in the black robe said with reason. Chapter 238. At that time, the 2 martial saints created a big hole in the upper 3 heavens and fell into the lower 3 heavens. Then they fought in the lower 3 heavens. They sank more than 20 mountains in the lower 3 heavens. Sank them? That's right, sank them. The black-robed man's expression was solemn and serious. It's the boundless sea of the lower three heavens. Do you know the boundless sea? Everyone nodded like chickens pecking rice. It was as if they had seen the boundless sea before. After the battle in the lower three heavens, the two martial saints finally couldn't take it anymore. With a boom, they created a big hole in the lower three heavens and fell into the lower three realms. The black-robed man described the battle vividly. They fell into the lower three heavens? Nonsense. Otherwise, how did Ask the Heaven Sword come out? The black-robed man rolled his eyes. Do you want to listen? If you don't, then I won't say any more. No, 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 no. It's my fault, waiter. Give me 2 more bottles of wine. After the battle in the lower three heavens, the two martial saints were finally exhausted, but they were still evenly matched. The black-robed man sighed, his eyes blurred. At that moment, Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huangquan finally used his last saber. Immediately after, Ask the Heavens Martial Saint finally unleashed the last sword of Ask the Heavens Sword. Everyone's hearts jumped to their throats. With a loud boom, the lower three heavens suddenly became like a tsunami. The mountains collapsed, the earth cracked, the sky turned upside down, the clouds changed color, and thunder and lightning struck. The black-robed man looked as if he was about to cry, and the two martial saints died together. Everyone's voices were filled with pity. However, even though the two martial saints died, their sabers and swords were still safe and sound. What's even more miraculous is that Underworld Saber and Ask the Heaven Sword absorbed the soul imprints of the two martial saints and thus created the imprints of martial saints. Do you know what a martial saint imprint is? Could it be? That's right. The black-robed man slammed the table. The life skills of the two martial saints were in Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber. Therefore, for 8,000 years there was a legend in the world. What legend? Everyone asked anxiously. Ask the Heaven Sword can ask the heavens. I will eradicate the injustice of the heavens. Underworld Saber, Saber Immortal, sending you to the underworld with 1 saber strike. The black-robed man let out a long sigh. His expression was filled with an expression that belonged to a lonely expert. Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber are enemies, but once the sword comes into being, the saber will not be left out. They would definitely show off their abilities and fight it out in this world. This is fate. Could it be? Not bad. The black-robed man sighed and said, everyone only knows that Ask the Heaven Sword has appeared in this world, but you don't know that Underworld Saber has also appeared in this world. Plus, there was also a storm of blood along the way. Everyone was shocked. Suddenly, the entire restaurant was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. This is the calamity of the pugilistic world, and also the greatest opportunity for the people of Heaven Layer. The black-robed man sighed and said, no matter who it is, as long as they have Asked the Heaven Sword or Underworld Saber, they can open this martial saint imprint. And whoever is able to activate this martial sacred seal will become a martial sacred in a short period of time. Become a martial saint. The restaurant immediately boiled with excitement. Who didn't want to become a martial sacred? Martial sacred, that was a real legendary figure. Since ancient times, how many martial sacred had appeared in the Heaven Layer continent? How many people did not even dare to think about it? How many people, after a lifetime of hard work, could only become a martial master? How many levels were there between martial master and martial sacred? Martial great master, martial revered, martial king, martial king, martial king, martial monarch, martial saint? Each title had a grade and each grade had 3 levels. Oh my god, I didn't even dare to think about it. Now there was a shortcut. Just by obtaining a sword and a saber, one could reach the heavens in 1 step and instantly become a martial sacred. This kind of opportunity only one was needed to shake the world. And now there were 2. Blood boiling. Blood boiling. Tell us about Underworld Saber. Everyone was even more excited. However, according to legend, anyone who obtains Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber, after being lucky enough to activate the martial sacred seal, must fight with the opponent. This is the obsession of the 2 martial sacred. The black-robed man slowly said, this matter is very dangerous. What danger? Plus, isn't this something that should be done? Everyone clamored. Even the saber and sword have become spiritual items. Plus, this is the last wish of the martial sacred. After obtaining their inheritance, isn't it natural to do something like this for them? This kind of danger made everyone even more excited. You think? The martial sacred seal of Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber is so easy to activate? The black-robed man rolled his eyes. First, One must obtain either Ask the Heaven's Sword or Underworld Saber, right? Plus, if one is not sincere, even if one obtains the sword or saber, it will be useless. There won't be any reaction. One must be a lucky person to be able to activate the martial sacred seal by chance. This matter is easier said than done. Nonsense. If it was easy, then wouldn't martial sacred be worthless? No matter what, whether it meets the requirements or not, one must obtain it first. Someone stroked his chin with a face full of longing. That's true. I heard that the people who obtained Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber did not have high cultivations. They only relied on their divine weapons. I heard that the entire lower three heavens is boiling. Almost all the sects and people of Jianghu are gathering. The black-robed man said. Sigh, this kind of heaven-sent opportunity, everyone wants it. For a moment, the entire restaurant suddenly quieted down. Everyone was thinking about something. However, there was an uncontrollable urge in everyone's heart. This kind of saber and sword, if they were in my hands, if I could become a legend, if I could wield Ask the Heaven's Sword and fight against Underworld Saber, ayaya, just thinking about it makes one want to be impulsive. For a moment, everyone in the restaurant who heard this news became excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. In a daze, they felt as if they were already wielding Ask the Heaven's Sword and activating the martial sacred seal. What's the use of thinking about it, Who knows where these two sabers and swords are now? Next to the window, a young man sighed and said, I really want to obtain them. Across from him, a black-robed young man with a cold expression also sighed and said, This is such a good opportunity to become a legend. This is such a good opportunity. He kept on sighing and groaning. Suddenly, the restaurant was filled with sighs. However, I heard that Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber do not have any restrictions. The young man next to the restaurant said, I heard that even if an ordinary person obtained them, they would still have a chance to become a martial saint. I heard that these two sabers and swords have the momentum to go to the province? The other black-robed young man asked. Then the two of them stopped talking. Everyone was deep in thought. Not long after, someone suddenly stood up and shouted, Shopkeeper Bill. Then he hurriedly left the restaurant. Immediately after, more and more people left. In a flash, more than half of the Jianghu people carrying sabers and swords in the restaurant had left. Next to the window, two young men smiled at each other. They could see from each other's eyes that they could not help but laugh. These two people were, of course, Chuyang and Gudu Xing. As for the so-called Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber, they were naturally non-existent. They were simply swords and sabers created by Chuyang. The two of them calmly finished their meal and walked out. It was not until they were far away from the town that they could not help but laugh out loud. Talents? They are really talents. Chuyang shook his head with a face full of admiration. I really can't imagine how such an ordinary sword could become Ask the Heaven's Sword. Such a big lie, these guys really dared to create swords. I also did not think that they would create such a big commotion. Gudu Xing's face was also full of wry smiles. He sighed with admiration. Like this, Diwu Qingro is really going to have a headache. Yes, Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber? Chuyang said with extreme admiration. I really can't imagine how they came up with such an idea. There were even two martial Ru *s. This is really too awesome. A martial saint from 8,000 years ago. Gudu Xing sighed and said, even if someone is suspicious in the lower three heavens, where would they go to investigate? Investigate? Chuyang laughed. Even if they find out the truth, would anyone believe it? If you don't know the root cause of this matter and someone tells you that this information is fake, would you believe it? Gudu Xing thought for a while and could not help but smile bitterly. If it was him, he would definitely not believe it. Even if he was skeptical, he would definitely rush to see if it was true. This idea is really good. Chuyang smiled and said, I was originally worried about what would happen if Diwu Qingro took the swords just as they caused a commotion. But now, with such earth-shattering momentum, if Diwu Qingro really kept them for himself, I'm afraid that the people of Great Zhao would tear down the Prime Minister's mansion and Golden Horse Riders department together. Gu Duxing also laughed joyfully. The two of them laughed in high spirits as they left on the boat. This journey was extremely lively. Almost the entire Jianghu was boiling. Every day different rumors could be heard. In short, Ask the Heaven's Sword and where did Underworld Saber appear? The entire Jianghu was in an uproar. Everyone was heading in one direction to gather at the prefecture. Along the way there was an endless stream of Jianghu people. There were even constant rumors. A certain hidden sect entered Jianghu because of this matter and rushed to the prefecture. A certain old devil who had been in hiding for a long time also suddenly appeared and entered the prefecture. A certain sect, all entered the prefecture. A certain sect was rushing to the prefecture. On this day, someone publicly announced that he was the descendant of Ask the Heaven Sword Ji Wen Tian after 8,000 years. This sword was the sword of the Ji clan's ancestor. It must be brought back to the ancestral shrine to be worshipped. After a few days, the 330th generation great-grandson of Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huangquan also appeared in Jianghu. He said that he would take back his ancestral saber at all costs. Following that, more than 10 sword sects rushed out of Jianghu at the same time. They claimed to be the orthodoxy of Ask the Heaven Sword sect. More than 10 sects claimed at the same time that this was the sect passed down by Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huangquan. Because of a long time ago the saber was lost and thus declined. Now there is finally a chance for the sect to regain its glory. If anyone dares to stop the return of the saber, we will not hesitate to perish together. Chapter 239. Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber had not reached the continent yet, but the continent was already in chaos. Ask the Heaven Sword Saint's 330th generation grandson, Ji Qingji, announced in the continent's capital. Do the descendants of Underworld Saber Saint dare to fight with me? Once the sentence came out, it was earth-shattering. In an instant, hundreds of descendants of Underworld Saber Saint appeared. They fought, cried, and shouted that they wanted to fight with Ask the Heaven Sword Saint's 330th generation grandson. And hundreds of people stood out and cursed. Ji Qingji, who do you think you are? I am the descendant of Ask the Heaven Sword Saint. There is an ancestral tablet here as proof. So many descendants of Ask the Heaven Sword Saint started to fight. They wanted to fight for the right and proper title first. As for the hundreds of Underworld Saber Saint's grandchildren, they were also having a great time fighting against each other. From all directions, Jianghu people rushed to the continent's capital like carps crossing the river. They were like the sand of the Ganges River, endless and unending. Many people even started to fight on the way. The closer they got to the continent, the more intense the situation became. As long as they met on the way, they would know that the other party was also going to fight for Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber. They would immediately turn against each other, unsheathing their swords and sabers and kill each other. This lively situation made Chu Yang think of a word: go to the market. Yes, go to the market, and it was a super big market. If you buy something this time, you will not have another chance to buy something in your lifetime. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing walked like this. Oh yeah, fuck. There are so many people. Along the way the two of them had a dumbfounded expression. Their eyes were wide open and their tongues were tied. Their bodies were almost cramping as they walked. When they arrived outside the continent's capital, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. There was a huge crowd outside the city gates. Some of them were carrying sabers, some of them were carrying swords, some of them were carrying axes, some of them were carrying tridents, some of them were carrying hammers, and some of them were waving their ame piercers. Of course there were also some empty-handed. Outside the north gate there were thousands of people. And in the distance, there were people in groups of 3 or 5, rushing over like meteors. Open the door. Open the gates. Someone shouted at the top of his lungs. He was furious. Why aren't you letting us in? That's right. Thousands of people clamored. Why can't we go in? Could it be that you want to monopolize Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber? Exactly. If you annoy the old man you will rebel. The emotions of the people below the city became more and more intense. Just as they were making a ruckus, Guangxing roared, "If you don't open the city gates, I will flatten this city." Following the shout, a silhouette flew up 7 to 8 feet, almost at the same height as the city wall. He exhaled in midair and shouted, "Damn your granny! Open the city gates." Before he could finish his words he fell to the ground. He landed on the ground with a thud. At that moment the city gates were filled with laughter. Hundreds of people were shouting, "If you don't open the gates, we will flatten this city." Chu Yang's whole body cramped as he watched. At this moment, a burly man who looked like an iron tower suddenly turned around and walked towards the two of them in an orderly manner. He suddenly arrived in front of them. "You two, what are you doing? Are you also here to steal Ask the Heaven Sword?" No, we are reading people." Chu Yang quickly smiled apologetically. Reading people is even worse." The burly man stared at him angrily. "Behave." Yes. Chu Yang nodded like a chicken pecking rice. The burly man left. After a while, another group of people came to investigate. After 7 or 8 rounds of questioning, there was a sudden commotion in front of them. There were sounds of fighting. Bastard. You are allowed to come, but we are not allowed to? What kind of logic is this? Someone said angrily. You are not allowed. What? If you know what's good for you, leave quickly. If you still want, ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber, I will kill you. An unreasonable voice said. What? Ask the Heaven's Sword is yours? Someone on the side was annoyed by this. What? You don't like it? Are you itching for a beating? Beat your uncle. Teach him. Immediately, the fight between 3 to 5 people became a fight between dozens of people. Then there was a yes. Who hit the old man? Motherfucker. Who shot out the hidden weapons? Come out. Someone was enraged and was caught in the crossfire. Bastard. You hit the old man's asterisk. Ouch. It hurts so much, motherfucker. Underworld Saber is the old man. Ask the Heaven's Sword is grandpa's. Hundreds of people started fighting. Curses, angry roars, miserable screams, the sound of wind breaking, the sound of clothes fluttering, the sound of people cursing their mothers, cursing their ancestors. Someone even shouted loudly, I am the Underworld Saber Saint Xia Huangquan, the 338th generation of the Sun Xia border stream. Let me in. As soon as this guy shouted, dozens of people rushed over and beat him up. Die your grandmother. Who told you to be an underworld? Who told you to be an underworld? You are Xia Huangquan's grandson? You are my grandson. You are the 338th generation. I think you are just AB asterisk TCH. Suddenly, the north gate was filled with laughter, curses, and punches. Some people were laughing, some were crying, some were screaming, and some were screaming. In just a moment, how could it be so lively? And this was only the northern gate. The other 3 gates were also in a mess. In fact, it was even messier than this one. Woo woo. A loud horn sounded from the top of the city wall. Immediately after, someone shouted, Everyone! Everyone! Listen to me. The Jianghu people under the city wall slowly stopped fighting. On top of the city wall, a 40 to 50-year-old old man wearing a brocade robe stood proudly with his hands behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the wind as if he was riding the wind. Everyone. Regarding the matter of Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber, Prime Minister Diwu has investigated in detail. The brocade-robed old man scanned the crowd and saw that everyone was looking up at him. He couldn't help but smile. 8,000 years ago, there was no Ask the Heavens Martial Saint, and there was no Underworld Saber Saint. In other words, this matter is purely a conspiracy. It is purely a conspiracy by King of Hell Chu. The brocade-robed old man shouted loudly. Your mother's fart. Before he could finish, hundreds of people started cursing at the same time. Grandma! You old bastard, what nonsense are you spouting? Conspiracy. Your whole family is full of pubic hair. If you say there is none, then there is none? Who do you think you are? Bastard. If Diwu Qingro says there is none, then there is none? Did this old bastard come back from 8,000 years ago? Someone shouted loudly. Elder Jing, I've carefully investigated and verified it. I can prove that 8,000 years ago, Ask the Heaven's Sword Saint did exist. Underworld Saber Saint did exist. Someone shouted loudly, this matter is confirmed without a doubt. This matter is too simple. Diwu Qingro wants to take Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber for himself. Diwu Qingro, do you think the heroes of the world are idiots? Chu Yang squatted in the crowd and shouted while pinching his nose. The power of this shout was even greater. The people below were already very emotional. They were like a bag of explosives that had been brewing. Chu Yang's shout completely ignited them and caused them to explode. Damn Diwu Qingro. Quickly open the gates. Despicable Diwu Qingro. Despicable and dirty Diwu Qingro. Bastard Diwu Qingro, you have been cuckolded for generations. I don't know where you came from, but you still want to take Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber for yourself? Charge. Kill. Charge in. Charge in, Ask the Heaven's Sword is inside. Yes. Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber must be in Continent City right now. Otherwise, why won't Diwu Qingro let us in? Chu Xie pinched his nose and shouted angrily, maybe Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber are already in Diwu Qingro's hands. Diwu Qingro won't let us in because he is breaking the Martial Saint imprint. This sentence immediately woke everyone up from their dream. Yes, it must be so. Bastard Diwu Qingro. Minister Chu shouted loudly. Bastard Diwu Qingro, your 18 generations of ancestors. Thousands of people shouted at the same time. Everyone felt that this sentence was right in their hearts. Cursing made them very happy. Charge in, destroy the city gate. Break the city gate. Gu Duxing pinched his nose and shouted from behind. This coffin face was so excited that his face turned red. That's right, destroy the city gate. Thousands of people rushed forward. Ouch, silence. The voice of the old man on the city wall changed. Whoever dares to disobey will be punished for treason. His entire family will be executed. Fuck your ancestors. I've always been in the Jianghu and I'm just a fucking bachelor. If Diwu Qingro has the ability to exterminate the old clan, then go ahead. You're right. Even if he was old, he would still be single and his entire family would be executed? Copy your mother's head. To be honest, there weren't many of these Jianghu men who had families. Moreover, all of them were fugitives. Why would they care about the extermination of their families? He actually dares to threaten us, this bastard Diwu Qingro. King of Hell Chu hid in the crowd and shouted, "Do you think that we, the people of Jianghu, can be scared by this dog official?" Oh. Instantly, the crowd's emotions became even more intense. There were already 40 to 50 people who rushed to the city wall. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, money, hooks, and tridents were all used to attack the city gate. Ding ding ding, dong dong dong, boom boom boom, dang dang dang. All kinds of weird sounds of people hitting the city gate sounded like a storm. Not long after, a good city gate had become full of bumps and hollows. It must be said that the power of the crowd was enormous. On the city wall, the soldiers unsheathed their sabers and drew their arrows. However, the commander was hesitant and didn't dare to give the order. He knew that if he were to shoot an arrow, he would not be able to suppress today's uprising. But, even if an arrow wasn't released, as long as the city gate wasn't opened, the tempers of these people would still be uncontrollable. Chapter 240. The crowd was like a tidal wave, shouting and rushing in. The city gate was not small. When it opened, it was wide enough for more than a dozen tall horses to advance side by side. But when the city gate opened, experts from all directions rushed in at the same time. The next moment, they collided together and squeezed into a lump of metal. The city gate opened by itself, but hundreds of people squeezed together. At this moment, no one could enter. Only the sound of shouting and cursing was heard, resounding through the clouds. Fuck you. You're squeezing your ancestors. Ayaya, you're squeezing me to death, you're squeezing me to death. Get out of the way, get out of the way. You're trying so hard to squeeze me to death. The most ridiculous thing was that there were two burly men in the crowd. Their faces were full of whiskers and they were slightly stronger. They were squeezed together and after a few fiddles, they were actually pushed up by the crowd and were a head taller than everyone else. Both of them were red in the face and ears. Their beards were about to explode. Their bodies were tightly pressed together and their faces were actually nose to nose and mouth to mouth. Once they opened their mouths, they began to eat each other's saliva. This kind of explosive phenomenon appeared in front of everyone's eyes and immediately caused a burst of laughter. Although everyone was squeezed so tightly that they could not move, they still could not help but laugh. This laughter was incredible. Everyone's bellies contracted and swelled. Instantly the pressure increased. This is the pugilistic world. This is the pugilistic world. Chu Yang looked at the scene in front of him but did not laugh. If it were the army, even if there were 1 million people outside the city gate, this would not happen. But there are less than 10,000 people here and they actually made such a joke. A mob. Gu Duxing commented accurately. That's right. Compared to the army, the pugilistic world is a mob. Every single one of these people had a much higher cultivation base than the average soldier. One person can even deal with a group of soldiers. But if 1,000 pugilistic world people like this fight with 1,000 well-trained soldiers, the losers will definitely be the pugilistic world people. Even if the army loses 1,000 people, it will not be a big deal. Chu Yang said in a deep voice, therefore there's a saying in the army, 1 Jianghu man is strong, 10 Jianghu men are terrifying, 100 Jianghu men are insignificant, but 1,000 Jianghu men are just a pile of meat waiting to be cut. Gu Duxing thought about it carefully and finally nodded in agreement. Therefore Jianghu people are only suitable for Jianghu people. Chu Yang concluded, don't ever expect them to do anything big. At this moment, the crowd in front of the city gate finally dispersed and began to fight to enter the state capital. Their faces were flushed red. It was as if Ask the Heaven Sword and Underworld Saber were right in front of them, waiting for them to take them. When more than half of the crowd had left, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing started to walk towards the city. He could only take a few steps. He saw the two of them fighting on the ground. You punch me, I punch you back. Both of them were rolling on the ground outside the city. They were the two people who were kissing in the air. Obviously, the two of them felt that it was too shameful. Chu Yang smiled and walked around the two of them into the city. After walking for a while, he could still hear the sounds of punching and kicking mixed with painful yelling and cursing. What do you think they are doing now? Chu Yang asked with a smile. I guess. There must be two people who are using the jade tokens you swindled to be guests at Di Wuqing Ro's place. As for the other two, they should still be stirring up trouble. Gu Duxing said with certainty. Yes, I thought about it when I assigned them. Chu Yang laughed. GMO is a lazy person. If he can sit, he won't stand. If there's a place for him to rest, he will naturally go. Plus, Miao Butong has a kleptomaniac habit. Being a guest at such a big family's place is convenient. Ah, Gu Duxing rolled his eyes. This boss even has a kleptomaniac habit? As for Dong Wushang, he is a martial arts fanatic. With a sword in hand, he will naturally stir up trouble. The more people fight with him, the more excited he is. So, he must still be fighting now. Chu Yang counted with his fingers. Then, what about Luo Kadi? Yes, although Luo Kadi is also a person who wants to see the world in chaos, this guy is also a bit of a bully. So, once the enemy is strong, Luo Kadi's role will come. He will pull Dong Wushang and run away immediately. Chu Yang smiled amusedly. If it's only Dong Wushang, he won't run away until the last moment. That's too dangerous. But it's different with Luo Kadi. I see. Gu Duxing finally understood the real purpose of Chu Yang's arrangement. He didn't just consider character, but also considered what might happen, the danger they might encounter, and the way to deal with it. If that's the case, why did you switch sabers and swords? Gu Duxing said in bewilderment. You know that GMO is good with swords and Dong Wushang is good with sabers. But you still let GMO use sabers and Dong Wushang use swords. Isn't this putting the cart before the horse? It's not putting the cart before the horse. Chu Yang said in a heavy voice. First of all, GMO has his own sword. So we can't let him fight with another sword for a long time. Because this will cause the fusion between his spirit and his sword energy to become uncoordinated or incomplete. Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. Chu Yang's words were somewhat mysterious. But if one wasn't an expert in the way of the sword, one definitely wouldn't be able to say such words. Every sword, even if it was made of ordinary metal, had its own soul. Spirituality. That was the principle. And Dong Wushang is the same principle. But to Dong Wushang, he's too obsessed with sabers. This is a good thing, but there's one thing that's disadvantageous. That is, the way of the saber and the way of the sword are interlinked. Especially the lightness of the way of the sword, it's incomparable before the way of the saber reaches the peak. Other than protecting the spirituality of Dong Wushang's saber, I also want Dong Wushang to experience some lightness of the way of the sword during this period of life and death battles. The closer he is to life and death, the more he can achieve breakthroughs. This will be the greatest benefit to his cultivation of the way of the saber. Chu Yang said casually, if I explain these things in advance, it won't work. So I purposely arranged it this way. I only hope that Dong Wushang can comprehend it himself. So that's how it is. Gu Duxing pondered. He couldn't help but admire Chu Yang more and more. Chu Yang's meticulous thinking had already reached the point where he didn't care about anything big or small. Who would have thought that his simple arrangement of a saber and a sword would have such a deep meaning? Didn't you say that it was a foreshadowing? Gu Duxing said, why didn't you use it now? Instead, you let GMO and Miao Butong go? Isn't this foreshadowing? Chu Yang said in surprise, haven't I already used my foreshadowing? Used? Gu Duxing opened his eyes wide. At that time, I revealed the names of GMO and the others in front of Qing Yunhe. Naturally, they would be able to find out their identities. And the situation at that time was very strange. If I said that King of Hell Chu didn't arrange it, I'm afraid no one would believe it. At the very least, someone at Di Wuqing Ro's side would have seen through it. Chu Yang said with a smile. So, when GMO and the others arrived at Great Zhao, Di Wuqing Ro's people would subconsciously think that I was among them. Do you understand? So they would watch GMO and Miao Butong closely? They would hope to find you from them? Gu Duxing was happy. So, I already told GMO and Miao Butong to return to Great Zhao after they were done. And I would not contact them in Great Zhao. Chu Yang said with a smile. I don't know what expression Di Wuqing Ro or Qing Yunhe would have when they see GMO and Miao Butong. Gu Duxing shook his head and sighed. I'm sure they would be very depressed. Haha. Chuyang laughed. They obviously knew that these two were King of Hell Chu's brothers, but they didn't dare to make a move. Gu Duxing couldn't help but smile bitterly. Once they made a move, they would provoke two big clans. They didn't dare to relax, but they also didn't dare to get too close. And these two were shameless people. Gu Duxing sighed. I can totally imagine Di Wuqing's mood. Di Wuqing's mood was indeed very bad. Could be said that it was terrible. Suddenly, Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber appeared. They almost made Di Wuqing explode in anger. Di Wuqing had always been expressionless. Even if the army was defeated and lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers in one day, Di Wuqing would not even frown. But now this matter really made him so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. The Heaven's strange records were right next to his hand. All the major events of the next tens of thousands of years were inside. Where was Ask the Heaven's Sword Saint? Not to mention Underworld Saber T. To think that such a sword and a saber would suddenly appear out of nowhere. Wouldn't that be extremely depressing? And the most depressing thing was, this matter could not be explained clearly. Di Wuqing had once asked people to take out the Heaven's strange records to explain, and the result was that it was almost burned. Isn't this history decided by you? A king-level master who saw it said with conviction, who are you trying to fool with a broken book? Do you really think that everyone in the world is stupid? This kind of thing, you can throw out dozens of gold tails and take out as many books as you want. Such words made Prime Minister Di Wu furious. He had never seen someone who did not know what was good for him. But, Di Wuqing had also realized the seriousness of this matter from this incident. A king-level master easily believed this rumor and did not even acknowledge the truth of the boat. What about other people? Ordinary Jianghu people were even more irrational. Prime Minister's manner. What about that Duke Ji? Di Wuqing frowned. Did he bring that saber and sword? Both of them have sabers and swords. Duke Gmo has a long sword, but Duke Miao only has a short saber. Cheng Yun he said cautiously, in my opinion that Duke Ji's sword should not be Ask the Heaven's Sword. Ask the Heaven's Sword. Gao Sheng sneered, what Ask the Heaven's Sword? It is just a conspiracy. That Duke Ji is Gmo tomorrow, I will go meet him. Chapter 241. Gmo Second Duke Ji, you are so arrogant. A clear voice said. Who is it? Gmo stretched out his words and lazily opened his eyes. Suddenly he exclaimed and stood up. Young Master Gao? Why are you here? Haha, a distinguished guest is truly a great honor. Brother Cheng, serve tea. Serve good tea. Cheng Yunhe's face darkened. He had the urge to kick this bastard out. You really think this is your own house? How dare he order her around like a servant? Cheng Yunhe had no choice but to swallow his anger and order the maids to serve tea. Then he slipped away. Let Gao Jing deal with them. Cheng Yunhe had had enough of these days. This second Duke Ji did not have the consciousness of a guest. He directly came to his own clan and acted as if it was his own courtyard. Who could stand this? Brother Ji, why are you interested in coming to the prefecture to play? Gao Xing sat down and asked with a smile. Young Master Gao, you are wrong. Gmo sat up and said, my legs are my own. I can go wherever I want to go. Besides, this prefecture capital is not your Gao clan's property. Why can you come but I can't? Of course not. Gao Sheng had great self-restraint. He smiled and said, I am just afraid that Brother Ji will get lost. If you can't go back, that would be terrible. Even if I lost my way, I wouldn't run to Brother Gao's father-in-law's house. Gmo mischievously laughed and said, Young Master Gao, I heard that young Lady Huyen has also come to the lower 3 heavens for this time's training. It seems that you and your fiancé will reunite in the prefecture capital. Gao Sheng's expression changed. 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. The Miss Huyen that Gmo was talking about was the second miss of the Huyen family. She was Gao Sheng's fiancé. It was said that she had big arms and a round waist. She had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear. Grand Duke Gao Sheng didn't seem very satisfied with this marriage. If not for this Miss Huyen, Gao Sheng would not have hidden at Di Wuqing's place. Now that Gmo mentioned it, he was poking at his sore spot. I heard that Miss Huyen is devoted to Brother Gao. She chased him from the 3rd heavens for tens of thousands of miles all the way to the lower 3 heavens. Gmo laughed mischievously and said, Young Master Gao, the beauty's affection is heavy. You must not let her down. If you say one more word, do you believe that I will immediately tear your mouth? Gao Xing gnashed his teeth and said in a low and ferocious voice, "I'm so scared of you." GMO snorted and said, "If you threaten me again, do you believe that I won't immediately announce to the world that you are here? Let your fiancé come to you and get intimate with you?" The two of them gritted their teeth and glared at each other like fighting cocks. After a long time they suddenly laughed at the same time. Gao Xing comfortably buried his body into the chair and said, "GMO, I heard that you were in Iron Cloud during this time? Well, I really didn't know that you were in Great Zhao. You are quite well informed." GMO finally got up from the recliner and sat across from Gao Xing. "Since you are in Iron Cloud, have you seen the famous King of Hell Chu?" Gao Xing asked with great interest. "What about King of Hell Chu?" GMO sighed and said, "Gao Xing, I know why you came here today. But I can't tell you about this matter." "What? You have your friends? I also have my contacts." GMO said bluntly, "As you said, since I am in Iron Cloud, it is impossible for me not to know King of Hell Chu. But I regard him as a friend. Do you understand what I mean?" The smile on Gao Xing's face disappeared. He said somewhat seriously, "You mean, King of Hell Chu is your friend?" "Yes, that's what I said." GMO nodded seriously. "That's why I can't tell you anything about him." "I understand." Gao Xing nodded silently and said with a smile, "I won't force you." He originally wanted to fish for information, but before he could even begin, GMO had already made it clear. Moreover, he had already made it clear that there was no way forward. "You have your friends. I also have mine. You can't betray your friends." "I can't either." Gao Xing thought in his heart, since GMO said so, then he must not be lying. He didn't know that even though GMO didn't lie, he was still hiding something. He and King of Hell Chu were not just friends. They were brothers. "This is..." Gao Xing looked at Ji Butong. "Yin Butong." Rui Butong nodded and smiled. "Young Master Gao, I have heard a lot about you." "Young Master Yin is also from Santian?" Gao Xing asked with interest. "I wonder which clan has a young talent like young Master Ji. I don't dare to call myself a young talent. As for a clan, there is none." Ji Butong smiled. "Young Master Gao thinks too highly of me." "You don't know him?" GMO pointed at Ji Butong and asked in surprise. "Gao Xing, you didn't come down to train recently, right? I feel that you have been down here for a long time." "It's been almost 2 years." Gao Xing sighed. In order to avoid that hag, he couldn't go back home for 2 years. Speaking of which, it was really bitter. "No wonder." GMO said, "Even if you don't know Rui Butong, you should know Stealing God and Thieving Ghost, right?" "Stealing God and Thieving Ghost?" Gao Jing suddenly became serious. Could it be? Rui Butong is the common disciple of Stealing God and Thieving Ghost. A year ago he made his debut in Santian. The name Tongtian Thief was very famous. GMO looked at Gao Xing from the corner of his eyes. "You are really ignorant?" "So it was you." Gao Xing was shocked. He thought this was King of Hell Chu, but it turned out to be a great thief. Knowing Rui Butong's identity, Gao Xing had a headache. Then, "Brother Ji, the more than 100 big theft cases, were all done by you?" As he said this, Gao Xing swallowed his saliva. There were several million taels of silver notes and some strange treasures. Gao Xing was envious of these things. Silver notes were not very useful in upper 3 heavens, but in upper 3 heavens they were common goods. What a huge fortune this was. But for Great Zhao this was a big case. The culprit was the disciple of Stealing God and Thieving Ghost. He could not catch him. If he angered Stealing God and Thieving Ghost, Di Wuqing Ro's Great Zhao Empire and his Gao clan would be in trouble. "You think I want to do it?" GMO Butong said angrily. "It is all because of Second Duke Ji. He is so poor that he is crazy. Every day he forces me to steal." Gao Xing rolled his eyes. "You are the disciple of Stealing God and Thieving Ghost. Who would dare to force you? You are the one who is itchy. You are alive because of King of Hell Chu's request, and you are pushing the blame to GMO. Yes. Young Master Gao, this money is too easy to come by." GMO was so happy that he could not close his mouth. He reached into his bag and took out a large amount of silver notes. He gave it to GMO. Take it. We can spend money together. I, GMO, am not a stingy person." Gao Xing did not know whether to laugh or cry. "GMO, let me ask you something. Since we are both from the 3 heavens, you have to answer me truthfully." Gao Xing rejected GMO's silver notes and said seriously, "If King of Hell Chu and Great Zhao, what is your position?" "After a while, I will return to the 3 heavens." GMO said casually. "That is great. Gao Xing said with a smile. Young Master Gao, do you know where the Ji clan's trainees went? Brother Ling and the others are also coming to the province. Gao Xing sighed, not only your Ji clan but also the Luo clan. Gu clan, Mo clan, Black Saber clan, Lu clan, Dong clan, Wang clan. Almost all the clans that came to train are coming to the province. Just by counting on his fingers, Gao Xing felt a headache coming on. It's all because of Underworld Saber and Ask the Heaven Sword that appeared out of nowhere. Sigh, this is really a trap. As Gao Xing said this, he looked at Ji-Mo's face. I've also heard of Ask the Heaven Sword. Ji-Mo furrowed his brows, his face deep in thought. But, Brother Gao, I've never heard of a Ask the Heaven Sword saint 8,000 years ago. Could it be, the clan's records are wrong? Motherfucker, what Ask the Heaven Sword saint? It is completely false. Gao Xing cursed. That bastard king of Hell Chu purposely came up with a scheme to cause internal strife in Great Zhao. That is a matter between Great Zhao and Iron Cloud. What does it have to do with you? GMO rolled his eyes. You just want to watch the show. It is like watching a play. Why are you so anxious? Could it be that you want to participate in the struggle for power in the lower three heavens? Young Master Gao, could it be that your Gao clan is living too comfortably? Are you looking for excitement? Gao Xing immediately calmed down and laughed dryly. Nonsense. How could I do that? GMO sneered in his heart. You won't do that? As if. Gao Xing once again kissed GMO in a roundabout way for a while. Unfortunately, GMO didn't leak anything. If he asked too much, GMO would act shamelessly and talk nonsense with his eyes wide open. However, the strength of the two families was comparable. Gao Xing didn't dare to casually offend this second young master of the Ji clan. After a long time he had nothing to show for it. He could only leave resentfully. That night, the Great Zhao Prefecture's capital was in turmoil. Underworld Saber suddenly appeared in the east of the city, then in the west of the city. Suddenly it killed a bloody path. Suddenly, it carried people and went back and forth to perform divination. The entire prefecture was like a pot of boiling water, rising and falling one after another. That night at least 1 million people could not sleep. Dong Wuxiang and Luo Kudi were playing crazily. In addition, they had changed their appearances so no one could recognize them. They were even more unscrupulous. Dong Wuxiang took the saber and went out to cause trouble. Luo Kudi covered for him while looking for a few big clans to rob. He did not have the same methods as Ji Butong, but he was more direct. He directly went in to rob. For a while there was chaos. Chapter 242. The state capital is in chaos. Chu Yang stayed on the top floor of the state capital's largest inn. Looking at the people in all directions and listening to the chaos in all directions, he said with some satisfaction. Dong Wuxiang is fighting very happily. Gu Duxing was a little envious. Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang's temperament was similar. They were both somewhat introverted battle maniacs. They thirsted for battle and killing. Naturally, they also hoped that they could be like Dong Wuxiang and fight to their heart's content. The only difference was that Gu Duxing was the calm battle type, while Dong Wuxiang would definitely become more and more fanatical the more he fought. This chaos is not enough. Chu Yang pondered and said, this chaos is only on the surface. Once those powerful disciples from the big clans arrive, it will be settled very quickly. After all, they all know that 8,000 years ago, when Tian Martial Saint and Netherworld Saber Saint did not interfere. Chu Yang sighed and said, how should we promote this matter? Not necessarily. Gu Duxing smiled and said, this idea was GMO's. Since GMO came up with such an idea, and it was obviously carefully considered by the four of them, there must be a purpose. It will not be so simple. Purpose? Chu Yang was stunned. When GMO took away the saber, didn't he let you draw a mark on the saber? Gu Duxing said in a low voice, although I grew up in the Gu clan, I am not a direct descendant. So, I did not have the opportunity to see some of the treasured books of the big clans. Gu Duxing said in a low voice, but GMO is a direct descendant of the Ji clan. Although I do not know the purpose of GMO drawing that mark, I know that there must be a deeper meaning. According to my guess, only when that secret mark is discovered by others and the scam of when Tian Martial Saint is exposed, there will be an even bigger commotion. Gu Duxing sighed and said, now I am only worried that he will not make this matter too big. Otherwise, if the big clans of the three heavens also participate in the fight, then it will be a real disaster. Chu Yang frowned. He thought carefully for a long time. Then he said with uncertainty, it can't be, right? Haha. Gu Duxing's cold lips revealed a trace of a warm smile as he said, "Perhaps you've realized it yourself. We brothers have been fighting each other since the moment we met. Neither of us is willing to submit to the other. But you've always been able to suppress the internal strife to a level that everyone can tolerate. At that time you were far weaker than them, but you were able to control the entire situation and even change everyone's mood. This already convinced them. Later on, with your help, everyone improved greatly, and it was confirmed that your position as the boss was unshakable. For any one of the three heavens clans, subduing so many two dukes at the same time was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but you did it. Of course, this is because you don't belong to any of the clans in the three heavens. However, there is no need to doubt your ability." Gu Duxing said deeply, "Later on when everyone sparred with you, you were basically being abused. But you didn't get angry. Instead you were happy with it. This promoted the formation of the word brothers. There is nothing unacceptable between brothers. The boss is not a high and mighty leader. He is just a member. This made everyone feel comfortable and warm." Chuyang was deep in thought. He didn't speak. "So, after that month we were already inseparable." Gu Duxing's eyes revealed a smile. "When you suddenly mentioned dealing with Mo Tianyun, the five of us were surprised. At that time we analyzed it. Then you seemed to have changed your mind and didn't mention it again. But GMO and the others all knew that it wasn't that you didn't want to mention it or not that you didn't want to do it. You just didn't want to discuss it with them. You mentioned dealing with Mo Tianyun because of Xiao Wu. At that time you were a little impulsive. Later on you considered the clans of the brothers so you didn't mention it. But the brothers didn't want to. Because you said not to mention it, they didn't want to. You wanted to cause internal strife in Great Zhao. You wanted to create a storm in the provinces for the sake of the dynasty's power struggle. But GMO and the others created this matter. They wanted to create a storm among the clans of the three heavens." Chuyang suddenly understood. "This way it would be much easier for you to deal with Mo Tianyun. Plus, in a chaotic place, even if Mo Tianyun really died, no one would suspect you. After all, King of Hell Chu is still in Iron Cloud right now. This was the last thing the brothers did for you before they left." Gu Duxing quietly said, "Even though they didn't say it beforehand, as long as they did it, they would do it to the best of their abilities. Otherwise they wouldn't have left with peace of mind. Chuyang, from the day we truly treated each other as brothers, we each had the most precious treasures and almost half of the clans of the three heavens. Maybe they thought about this point or maybe they didn't realize it. But after many years, this kind of glory is just around the corner. So, I guess that Ask the Heaven's Sword and Underworld Saber are just the beginning," Gu Duxing quietly said. Chuyang's heart warmed. Gu Duxing's words set off stormy waves in his heart. He slowly walked to the window and looked at the night outside. After a long time, he let out a sigh of relief and said softly, "Such brothers, such feelings. How could I forget? If you don't betray me, I won't betray you. Duxing, the future of us brothers won't just be in three heavens." Gu Duxing faintly smiled. He seemed to be able to grasp Chuyang's state of mind and said, "Chuyang, no matter what you do, don't rush. To deal with Diwu Qingro, your plan was almost flawless. But to deal with Mo Tianyun, you were a bit too hasty." Yes. How could Chuyang not know? But when he thought about Mo Qingwu's situation, he couldn't help it. "Also, this time when we go to Great Zhao we need an identity." Gu Duxing walked to his side and looked at the night sky reflected by the white snow outside with him. He said, "We have to participate in this chaos. Body gems have already been prepared." Oh. Chuyang faintly smiled and said, "Right now we only need to snatch. Participate in the fight for this saber and this sword." "Wonderful." Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. As long as the two of them participated in the fight and made a name for themselves, they would have an identity even if they didn't have one. This way not only would the water be muddier, but it would also prevent people from suspecting King of Hell Chu. Because this entire matter was King of Hell Chu's scheme. Who would have thought that King of Hell Chu would personally participate in the fight? "Let's go." Chuyang exerted force on his feet and went out through the window. Gu Duxing's body was like the wind as he followed closely beside him. The two shadows blended into the night together. Dong Wuxiang held Ask the Heaven's Sword and killed in all directions. After fighting with a sword for a long time, Dong Wuxiang went from being uncomfortable in the beginning to being able to use it with ease. Slowly his heart gained a lot of insights, and his own martial arts in this period of fighting and tempering became more and more mature. Faintly there was a tendency to break through to the Saber Grandmaster level. This made Dong Wuxiang very surprised. He had been using a sword all this time, How could his saber skills improve so quickly? But doubts were doubts, and he didn't give up on this insight for even a moment. As his thoughts flashed, his hands didn't stop as he roared, "You want to steal my Ask the Heaven sword with just these few people? Are you worthy?" The sword aura suddenly spread out, and a rainbow suddenly flashed in the dark night. The clear sound was like pearls falling on a jade plate, and all the weapons attacking from all directions were cut in half in the first moment. 7 or 8 people simultaneously retreated in shock, and the surrounding people revealed a burning look in their eyes at the same time. Ask the Heaven sword. It was indeed a divine weapon that had been passed down through the ages. With this level of sharpness, the sword cut through more than 10 weapons without any damage to the sword. If the martial Saint Seal was activated, everyone shouted, "Leave the sword!" They were so excited that they almost danced with joy as they pounced forward and bombarded him. Dong Wuxiang's face was cold. His long sword shook and suddenly drew a big sword flower. He didn't dodge or evade as he faced them head-on. Sonorous sounds rang out continuously. Dong Wuxiang shouted, "Grandpa, please excuse me." He arrogantly cut a path through the crowd. His body flashed, and with blood dripping from his body, he rushed up to the treetops and sped away. Everyone was angry and anxious, yelling and shouting as they followed. Dong Wuxiang was like a marathon runner, swaggering across the city in a flashy manner. Moreover, he had that sword light that was like his signature. Along the way, people constantly noticed him. "Ah, isn't that Ask the Heaven sword?" Chase. Running wildly and circling around, the number of people behind Dong Wuxiang had increased from dozens to hundreds. But second young Master Dong was getting more and more excited. He felt his fighting spirit rising higher and higher. The saber energy in his heart was also expanding and was being stimulated. He was breaking through. "Ao touch!" Dong Wuxiang looked up to the sky and roared. Suddenly he jumped up. Under extreme excitement he actually soared into the sky. This time he was like a bull leaping 10 zhang into the sky. His arm fiercely raised and the sword tip pierced straight into the sky. Yuan Qi poured into the sword like a raging tide, reflecting the starlight and moonlight in the sky. Suddenly, it was as dazzling as a small sun. This time, not to mention the people following below, even the people in a radius of dozens of li could see it. Immediately, cries of surprise rose one after another. Large groups of people rushed over. But just as everyone was about to move, they stopped in shock. Because Dong Wuxiang, who was in the air, had let out another roar. Suddenly, a dense aura burst out. His body also stopped in the air at this moment. Grandmaster Dan breakthrough. At this time, the breakthrough that had been brewing for a long time suddenly came. Dong Wuxiang suddenly roared in the air as if he was showing off, "This grandpa has broken through again. Wow! Ask the Heaven sword is indeed a divine item." Seeing this scene, thousands of Jianghu people's eyes almost turned red at the same time. Envy, jealousy, and hatred. Ask the Heaven sword's power. It actually broke through while being chased. How awesome was this? Chapter 243. Breaking through while being chased? Who in Jianghu had not been chased before? Who was not in a difficult situation when being chased? Being able to escape was already good enough, how could they talk about breaking through? But this lucky bastard in front of them. He actually broke through while being chased. Why was this? Without a doubt. This was the power of Ask the Heaven sword. This was the mystery of Ask the Heaven sword. Dong Wuxiang glided down from the sky with a resplendent sword light. He roared, "Come! Eat my Ask the Heaven sword." The people below almost vomited blood. This bastard, he really took advantage of the situation and still wanted to show off. Ao! With a cry, hundreds of people rushed up at the same time. Dong Wuxiang's long sword made contact with the forest of weapons below. It bounced back and flew away like a meteor. There were already many Jianghu people on the rooftops waiting for an opportunity to attack. At this moment they all moved to block him. But how could they block the sharpness of Ask the Heaven sword? With a crash, the broken swords had not yet landed on the ground when Dong Wuxiang had already rushed out of the encirclement. Nearly 1,000 people rushed forward at the same time, as if they were riding on clouds. Dong Wuxiang lowered his head and ran wildly. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the entrance of a very imposing government office. It was the Ministry of War office of Great Zhao. There were still several groups of soldiers patrolling and guarding. "Who is it? Stop!" An order was shouted. Dong Wuxiang did not pay attention to it. Like a whirlwind, his 2 legs kicked continuously. 7 or 8 soldiers were kicked up by him. In the blink of an eye, a path was cleared. Dong Wuxiang was already in front of the tightly shut entrance of the Ministry of War office. With a flash of Ask the Heaven sword, Dong Wuxiang and his sword crashed into the door. With a boom, a big hole was created. Dong Wuxiang's body rolled inside and immediately disappeared. Behind him, more than 1,000 Jianghu people rushed over and saw Dong Wuxiang barging into the Ministry of War's Yamen. Enraged, they almost didn't even think about it as they rushed towards the entrance of the Ministry of War's Yamen. Stop! Stop! The voice of the guard was already high-pitched. This is an important military area. Who dares to barge in? Before he could finish his sentence, he was kicked to the ground. Immediately after, numerous large feet stepped on his body. Everyone screamed and rushed into the Ministry of War. In the blink of an eye, the solemn and dignified Ministry of War had turned into a pot of porridge. The soldiers of the garrison woke up from their dreams and came out to stop them. In the next moment they were already fighting in a daze. With a loud bang, Dong Wuxiang broke through one side of the wall with his sword in tow. He seemed to have rushed out in a panic, only to see several hundred Jianghu people glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. He let out a startled cry and fled back like lightning. With a loud bang he broke another big hole in the other side. When these people saw that this was the Ministry of War's Yamen, they had some misgivings. They did not impulsively rush in like the others and only watched. However, when they saw the owner of Ask the Heaven sword running out in a panic and then retreating back, it was like a piece of fat meat falling out of their mouths. How could he endure it? With this shout, everyone's heads turned hot. How could they still recognize that this was the Ministry of War's Yamen? Regardless of anything else, he followed behind and rushed in. With a loud bang, the wall on this side of the Ministry of War's Yamen collapsed. The urgent and mournful sound of a bugle horn was heard. It was the soldiers guarding the Ministry of War's bugle horn calling for backup. Immediately, the sound of the bugle horn came from all directions. The number of Jianghu people chasing after them slowly increased. These people did not know where Ask the Heaven sword went, but they did not dare to barge into the Ministry of War, so they all stopped. But at this moment they heard an angry roar. If you want to steal Ask the Heaven sword, you have to take my life first. Then they saw a bright sword light shoot up to the sky. Screams immediately filled the air. They could not help but feel refreshed. An old man with the cultivation of a revered martial artist shouted, "I will go in and take a look." He flew up and barged into the Ministry of War's Yamen. Everyone looked at each other. They saw that more and more Jianghu people were gathering and their courage was growing. Everyone thought of the words, "The law cannot punish the masses." Suddenly someone yelled, "Ask the Heaven sword is inside, what are we waiting for?" This yell ignited the night sky. Everyone immediately roared and rushed into the already dilapidated Ministry of War's Yamen with an earth-shattering momentum. After entering, they discovered that the inside was already in ruins. The ground was littered with corpses. There were soldiers and Jianghu people. Many of them had already died. The sounds of fighting and killing came from all directions. Screams came one after another. Everyone's eyes were red from killing. Some people were looking around suspiciously. Suddenly an angry voice shouted, "This is an emergency, who cares about the reason? Daring to barge into the Ministry of War's Yamen is a capital offense. Shoot the arrows." Shwa shwa shwa. Suddenly arrows rained down from all directions. Caught off guard, dozens of people were immediately shot and screamed. The death of their comrades aroused the bloodlust of these Jianghu people. Go! Fight them to the death. Fight these dogs to the death. With loud shouts, everyone unsheathed their swords and started fighting with the surrounding soldiers. The sound of horse hooves thundered. Reinforcements came from the nearby barracks. When the leader of the army saw the chaotic situation, he immediately made a decision. With a single order, the entire army charged in. A great battle was about to take place. Before the sound of horse hooves could be heard from all directions, the owner of Ask the Heaven sword, Dong Wuxiang, who had caused this chaos, had already broken through another wall in a very panicked manner and fled in panic. Whoa! With a strange cry, young Master Luo Kudi appeared with a bright sword light. He excitedly yelled, "Ask the Heaven sword is mine. You bastards dare to fight with me for it?" The sword light flashed and stopped more than half of the people chasing after Dong Wuxiang. Everyone was so angry that they almost fainted. Even if you want it, even if you are in a hurry, you should first get the sword, right? Now that you are not going to fight for it, instead you are stopping us. Isn't this just helping that guy escape? Their curses were correct. Luo Kudi wanted to help Dong Wuxiang escape. After fighting excitedly for a while, Luo Kudi turned around and ran. Why did that bastard run away? Leave the sword behind. A large wave of dizziness followed behind him and rushed over. Rumble. In front of them, a group of thousands of soldiers turned around the corner and rushed towards them. They were facing Luo Kudi. Brothers, let's kill them. The dog officials are here. We would rather die than kill these dog officials. Oh. Luo Kudi let out a strange cry and angrily rushed forward. Release the arrows. The leader's expression did not change. His eyes flashed with a cold light. With one command, thousands of arrows were released. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, black arrows covered the sky and covered the earth. Luo Kudi madly yelled, "Dog officials! You are so ruthless!" He waved his sword and protected his whole body. Like a shooting star, he rushed into the army. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of weapons clashing against each other rang out. Luo Kudi had already kicked the leading general off his horse. Both of his legs kicked the general's dignified square face violently. Who asked you to be so awesome? Who told you to be awesome? You son of a b******. The army surrounded Luo Kudi. Dozens of broadswords furiously hacked down towards Luo Kudi at the same time. Luo Kudi let out a loud cry, leaped up and scuttled out from under the belly of his horse. Hold on. Then, with a crash, he crashed into the wall of a big house and disappeared without a trace. The general, who was violently kicked by Luo Kudi for dozens of times, crawled up from the ground with his face covered in dust. Blood was gushing out from his nose and mouth. His face looked like a pig's head and a few of his teeth were missing. With a ferocious look he roared out, "Kill! Kill! Kill! Leave no one alive! Kill!" 2,000 soldiers rushed towards the hundreds of Jianghu people in front of them. These people had already suffered heavy casualties under the rain of arrows. At this moment each of them wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Thousands of soldiers rushed over and immediately surrounded them. Swords and sabers were raised, arrows rained down like rain, and rows of javelins fell from the sky. Kill! 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 The leader of the army covered his eyes and nose. His anger and shame had almost solidified. When he heard the bugle call of the Ministry of War, he immediately led his army to reinforce them, but they were intercepted halfway. That guy did not show any mercy. He looked like he was about to be disfigured. If this could be tolerated, what could be tolerated? Since these people are your brothers, then I will kill them all. The city was suddenly filled with smoke. The sound of the bugle call came one after another. The chaos in the Ministry of War had not yet subsided. From another direction there was an even bigger commotion. Ask the Heaven Sword. Ask the Heaven Sword is here. If someone was familiar with the city, they would know that the place where the commotion came from was the Ministry of Revenue of the Great Zhao Prefecture. The Ministry of War was already in ruins, and the Ministry of Revenue was in chaos again. Especially here it was even more chaotic. Second young Master Dong Wuxiang brought thousands of people and rushed into the Ministry of Revenue. In the midst of the chaos, second young Master Dong coincidentally broke into the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue. This time he was really awesome. Second young Master Dong was originally a madman who could use a 570 gene saber. Why would he care about anything else? With a kick, a gold cabinet flew into the air and suddenly fell down. At the same time, 2 Jianghu people who were chasing after him were smashed into meat paste. With a loud boom, the glistening gold scattered all over the ground. Wow! Gold! Second young Master Luo Kudi, who had just arrived, was very excited. He used a voice that sounded like he was about to go crazy. "Woo! So much gold. Everyone quickly grab it. Motherfucker, there is only one Ask the Heaven Sword, but there is so much gold. Motherfucker, this is real gold." As he said this, he picked up a few pieces for himself. Dong Wuxiang's powerful arms picked up the gold and silver cabinets one by one and threw them out. Immediately, the entire Ministry of Revenue was dazzling with a silver light. Boom! It was boiling. Chapter 244. And L/G wealth moves people's hearts. Pasun's words are indeed true. Gold and silver chests were scattered all over the ground. The white ones were silver, the yellow ones were gold, and the pieces were blinking under the starlight. Although this was only the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue and not the national treasury, the gold and silver were still vast. Although these Jianghu people ate meat and drank wine, when had they ever seen so much gold and silver? Most of them had gold in their eyes. They all hated their parents for not giving them more hands. They grabbed the gold and silver and stuffed it into their arms. For a moment, Dong Wuxiang, the owner of Ask the Heaven Sword, stood far away with his sword, and no one paid attention to him. Those who were still conscious were blocked by these people who were crazily snatching the gold and silver. Second young master Luo howled and disappeared again. Following that, the mournful sound of a bugle horn was heard. The person who blew the horn obviously didn't know how to blow it. A broken voice shouted, "The bandits have robbed the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue. The bandits have robbed the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue." It was second young master Luo who was shouting with all his might. The bugle horn sounded crazily from all directions. Large numbers of soldiers gathered in this direction. The leading general was one of the top 10 generals of the continent, Great Zhao's famous general Qiu Fengyang. The general's actions were extraordinary. With a shout, the sound of the bugle horn disappeared. Only then did the bugle horn of the Autumn Wind Army formation sound out in an orderly manner. Tens of thousands of soldiers advanced like a forest and surrounded the entire Ministry of Revenue. Qiu Fengyang's face was as cold as water. "No one is allowed to escape. Capture them all." All the soldiers agreed loudly. Then, under the command of various officers, they began to attack. These were Great Zhao's elite soldiers. How could these motley crew resist them? Dong Wuxiang had already slipped away in the chaos. Just as this side came to an end, suddenly the sound of gongs and drums came from the west of the city. A raging fire rose to the sky. Underworld Saber has appeared here. A wood-touching dog ant. Duke GMO raised his poison spring saber. No one was chasing him. He simply found a secluded place and shouted while pinching his nose. The excitement in his voice was as if he had eaten 100 pounds of aphrodisiac. On the other side, Miao Butong carried a big bag and climbed out of a rich family's house. He shouted from the roof of the house, "Underworld Saber has appeared. Where are you going?" "Underworld Saber." The explosive barrel exploded. "What? Underworld Saber also appeared? Let's go take a look. Hurry up, it will be gone if we are late." The figures were rushing over and over. GMO raised his Underworld Saber, which he feared others couldn't see and didn't know about, and swung it in the air. Unexpectedly, he didn't forget to scream, "Who is it? Who is so despicable? Sneak attack my old ass." Then he roared, "Who dares to steal my Underworld Saber?" In the dark, Gu Duxing and Chu Yang smiled at each other. A moment ago, Gu Duxing had pulled off a tile and ruthlessly smacked Jimo's buttocks. He really couldn't stand this guy's arrogance. Relying on the sharpness of Underworld Saber, he dashed left and right, jumping up and down in excitement, frothing at the mouth. "Oh. Oh. This bastard's extreme joy begets sorrow." Chu Yang looked at GMO, feeling both angry and amused at the same time. There are several revered martial artists besieging him. This is the first wave of revered martial artists to appear in tonight's chaos. We need to be ready to attack at any time. Gu Duxing nodded, his right hand already lightly grasping the hilt of his sword. Suddenly, several figures flew over like shooting stars, instantly flashing into the battlefield and attacking at the same time. 4 revered martial artists. GMO suddenly felt an enormous pressure and couldn't help but shout and curse, "Bastard, so many people besieging me? If you have the guts, fight one-on-one." Even the people besieging him were stunned. To say one-on-one in this kind of situation, one must have a rich imagination. Following a loud shout, Yin Butong flashed out from the shadows, "Underworld Saber is mine." But at this moment, the 4 revered martial artists had already attacked at the same time. They split into 4 directions and attacked GMO together with the others. GMO was only a martial great master, and under the heavy siege, how could he resist? Bang, bang, bang. GMO suffered a lot, and his body couldn't stand steadily. Suddenly, his back was hit by a palm from a distance. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered forward. Then, a hand shot out like lightning and grabbed the back of Underworld Saber. A huge force instantly spread along the saber. GMO felt his hand go numb and his chest was heavily shaken. Underworld Saber flew out of his hand. "We got it. Let's go." The person who snatched Underworld Saber shouted excitedly. 3 people surrounded him at the same time and rushed out side by side to protect him. Everyone's face was filled with excitement. Underworld Saber, a divine item that could allow one to break through to Saber Saint, they finally got it. Damn, Underworld Saber has been snatched away. Stop them. Miao Butong was so anxious that sweat appeared on the tip of his nose. GMO was also dumbfounded. Damn, according to my script, it can't be this far. This is bad. GMO was so frustrated that he almost vomited blood. How did revered martial artists appear today? Leave underworld saber behind. Stop him. Ran Xiangzhuan? No way. Kill? Underworld saber is in the hands of those four fellows. In the blink of an eye, a dense crowd of people rushed over from all directions and surrounded the four revered martial artists. However, the four revered martial artists were all highly skilled and were not afraid of a fierce battle. They were not like GMO. Although GMO was holding a treasured saber, he didn't want to hurt people as much as possible. However, these four people didn't have any scruples about killing people with their treasured sabers in their hands. In an instant, a wave of blood was split open. One after another, heads were sent flying in the air like smashed watermelons. One of them had his head chopped off and flew a few feet into the air. He still had time to shout, "Underworld saber is my treasure." The four of them were about to kill their way out of the encirclement. With their cultivation, before a large number of experts arrived at the provincial capital, they would be able to slip away without a trace. At that time, even if the entire world's army gathered, they might not be able to find them. GMO wanted to cry but had no tears. Rui Butong was also numb. How could it be like this? Suddenly, a black figure appeared out of nowhere and shouted, "Leave underworld saber behind." The long sword was like a dragon as it stabbed forward. A biting cold aura suddenly appeared with this sword. Before the sword arrived, the sword energy had already cut through the air and made a sound. The four of them turned pale with fright and cried out, "Swordsman!" This sword energy was grand and unstoppable. Facing the might of this sword, none of the four revered martial artists dared to meet it head-on. They did not dare to be careless and dodged one after another. In an instant, the four of them who had formed an iron wall were actually disintegrated by this one sword. The sword of a swordsman, the saber of a swordsman, was a violent and terrifying weapon of an expert of the same level. It was also a sword master, but as a sword master could easily wipe out an ordinary sword master. There was no comparison at all. The four of them dodged, but the devil-like sword did not change direction and swept towards the person holding the underworld saber. The sword energy was like a raging wave as it rushed forward. That person saw that he could no longer dodge. He closed his eyes and hurriedly raised the underworld saber to block. With a clang, the sword and saber collided and sparks flew everywhere. The sword energy of the swordsman was finally blocked and slowed down a little. That revered martial artist only felt that his head was dripping with sweat and his legs were almost soft. Luckily, the underworld saber was able to block that attack. Thinking about that lightning-fast sword, he felt as if his soul was drifting and a feeling of death filled his heart. In the next moment, the long sword was retracted like lightning. This revered martial artist turned around and ran without any integrity because he knew that the next step after the retraction of the sword was to stab again. Just now the four of them could not block it, let alone him. So he turned around and ran while cursing in his heart, "You are already a swordsman, why are you still trying to steal the underworld saber? Even if you steal it, can you even use it? This is so damn depressing. I have never heard of a swordsman stealing a saber. You should be stealing the heaven sword, brother." But the swordsman was still chasing after him. He only felt that the sword energy behind him was cold and his back was full of poisonous snakes. It was creepy. "Wanna run? Leave the saber behind or leave your life behind." Just as he was panicking, a sharp sword chi suddenly locked onto him. It was as cold as the sword of a god, and wherever the sword chi pointed, it seemed to fill the sky with snowflakes. It was a cold, silvery white. It was another swordsman. There was an obstacle in front and a pursuer behind. Both of them wanted to kill him. This revered martial artist was scared out of his wits. In an instant, his face was full of tears. Being locked on by two swordsmen at the same time? Even a king-level expert would be flustered? I am only a revered martial artist. How could I be worthy of such treatment? You two think too highly of me. Two swordsmen trying to steal a saber? This revered martial artist did not have time to think about this unimaginable matter. He did not have the time to be depressed. At this moment, his only thought was to quickly throw away the hot potato that was Underworld Saber. Underworld Saber was good and could help a person become a saber saint. But if he lost his life, what was he going to do? "I'll give you the Underworld Saber." This revered martial artist almost used a howl to urgently say this sentence. Cung could guarantee that if he said this sentence a little slower, there would be two transparent holes on his body. Before he could finish speaking, the Underworld Saber in his hand impatiently flew out. "I can give you my blade, but I can't give you my life." The martial saint closed his eyes and prayed in his heart, hoping that the other party would be merciful because of his obedience. However, at this moment, the unexpected happened. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.